going to travel back in time, find a dinosaur egg, bring it back to the future, sit on it until it hatches, raise it, love it, and then watch it mangle your lifeless, helpless carcass while I touch myself inappropriately.
Suck my dick. Fuck you.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest of them all?
Oh, don't.
So tell me, am I the fairest of them all?
Hell no. It's that foreigner, Yellow Snow.
What is going on?
Please give me cock.
I'm gay.
Walt Disney Pictures invites you to the party of the year. Yellow Snow and the Seven Dumplings.
God! Fucking boomerang! God damn it!
Meet Jeremy, a boy who sees the world a little differently.
I ain't gotta get good brain.
In a town that misunderstands him.
Whoa, not that I'll fuck.
Get down here, you fucking retard!
An unforgettable journey of friendship and love.
Will you stop looking at me tits?
I'm sorry. It hurts, but in a good way. You make me happy. You make my pee-pee maker tingle. Mama always said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know if you're gonna get AIDS. Like Jenny. She's a dead AIDS whore that I made an AIDS baby with.
Simple Jeremy. Coming soon. Inside a theater near you.
Friday Night Tights, everybody. Let's go. Let's go. I know a few of you were pointing out that we were late. It's in the song. It's in the song. We apologize, but we're probably late. I used we, blaming everybody else.
Might as well. The royal we, I thought.
The royal we. The royal we. Welcome. Today is a fun. We have some we have a show to talk about.
Yeah, don't call it that.
Don't call it a show.
Entertainment would be a bit too generous.
It's a movie,
Torture.
right?
It's
Torture.
a movie. Yes. Could you imagine if they released Section 31 in theaters?
Please.
It would have made less money than War of the Rohirrim.
Yeah.
I would have actually made a
right.
video about it then.
Oh, I'm still going to. It feels like I have to because I had to go. It felt like going back to 2018 because it was Star Trek making it still makes all these mistakes anyway, but it was like Star Trek Discovery 2 writers. I lost count of producers. I think it's 20. I think it's 20 again. They generally have 20 producers on this show, which is pretty amazing.
That's how you know it's good.
That's how you know
the
it's
entire
good.
movie was playing woke bingo with every single thing they could.
Uh.
Like they literally had
Uh-huh.
some guy where they had to comment about mecha dysmorphia,
Yeah.
and then he said
No.
I got offended.
Okay,
I'm like,
before we get started, Disparu, I know you want to go. I know you want to go. We're gonna get there, buddy. We're gonna get there. I promise you. I have 12 pages of retarded shorthand notes to go over here. But first,
I don't live tweet for things, but I couldn't resist for this because I'm like, there's no way anyone would believe this is real unless I screenshot it.
and you know what? Like, only Star Trek fans are going to understand, like, even, like, and I mean, like, you've watched some of the show. You don't have to be a hardcore to understand, like what's going on. Most of it's going to, it just sounds stupid, and it does. But to a Star Trek fan, it's 1,000 times worse. And that's why we have the Star Trek fan, the imagination connoisseur, the guy who coined the phrase "authenticity is the currency of the future." Robert Myer Burnett.
Thank you. It's always an honor to come back to this esteemed group of imagination connoisseurs. You are all imagination connoisseurs as well. So great to be back.
Don't
but boy,
compliment
what a
us.
depressing.
Don't
I feel like I'm
compliment
gonna
us.
wake.
Yeah.
Robert, don't compliment us. You know the rules around here. Talk
I'm
shit about us. We're all terrible.
We're awful.
We don't
people.
want you to have
disavow
just
us.
say bad things about us so you don't get a lot of hate. Right?
We don't want to get you in trouble.
I'm
Because you guys have always been very nice to me.
I'm surprised Jeremy even figured that out was a compliment. I figured he thought it was some kind of dinosaur or something.
Hey, listen. You guys think that Simple Jeremy is a meme, but it's a reality. All right, I struggle with it.
It's an
every day.
identity.
That's why he wears a hat, so he can hide the hair.
That's right. So
I don't know, Jeremy. I've seen some pretty convincing images that prove you're bald.
Yes,
so.
he's bald.
We're speculating on the internet.
there are people. So people really thought that was a real picture when he did that.
Of course.
Wait, it's not real.
Jeremy, you're like, make America great again.
That bald picture looked pretty legit.
It did.
was
Oh,
pretty
dude.
legit, yeah.
Reddit was like, got him. So,
They can put that next to the "I love the Last Jedi" video that they keep running.
Right.
We got him.
I
We
knew
got
he was
him.
catfishing us.
So we're going to talk about Star Trek Section 31. There is a lot to talk about. It is the worst Star Trek ever made, and that's actually saying something.
That's
consider-
bad.
Star Trek section 41%. That's the odds. One, there's a lot of representation, and two, that's the odds that you're going to kill yourself. After
Yeah,
you
I was
watch.
going to say I might be part of that 41%, but we're going to talk about that. The Captain America 4 budget has been announced by Disney. We'll discuss that as well, of course. And there was a very interesting LA Times article that came out in the last 24 hours or so that said Hollywood lost the culture war. So we're going to go over that as well. But what the hell? Let's start out with Section 31 as people.
But before that,
Before that.
Oh
Yeah. Don't worry. It's not an ad read. It's not an ad read. I think they've given up. I think they've given up. We have new. I do. We have new dime. Right here.
Yeah.
Beard oil.
yeah.
Beard oil.
That's on a piece of wood.
Yeah. Well, just for me. Just for me.
That's how hard it is.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's very manly.
It will give you wood. Yeah. It comes with little
hardy wood.
Cone. Hardy wood. It has a hardy wood comb because that's what you're supposed to comb your beard with is a wood comb. Don't use that plastic.
Damn right.
It's not good for the hair. No one knows how much that fucking cost, X-Ray girl. It might as well be Monopoly fucking money.
it's probably $2 American. Okay, it's really exchange rate.
Look, the Canadian dollars are going to be American dollars soon enough.
Hey, that's right. That's right.
I'm so excited.
Well, as California announces they have enough signatures to secede. Did you hear about that? KTLA News reported it, so it's got to be true. Yeah, so we got a little comb. It's a beard oil. It smells really manly and cool, and the ladies like it, and it will get you laid. So there.
Whoa,
nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Link is in the description if you are interested in the beard oil.
Dang. There we go.
The fine
come
print.
with one of those money back guarantee things, or
no. And the fine print is if you can't get laid, that's your problem. Okay.
Hey, real quick before we get started too, we have it confirmed that Saturday for MegaCon is going to be our panel at noon. So we announced that yesterday on Open Bar. So was that February 8th? So the same day as the fan meetup at Universal Studios City Walk. That'll be that night. But that day, our panel is at 12 noon at MegaCon. We're going to have full details put on geeksandgamers.com. Locations and everything like that. So
Yes.
there's the meet and greet schedule as well. So
If you're interested, so after the panel, there's going to be meet the panelists at the Rippaverse booth. So if you guys are interested, plus there's other times for meet and greets as well. So yeah.
And if you have not RSVP'd for the meetup, please do that because we have already had a lot of people. I don't know if this is our most RSVPs we've had, but there's a lot of people that have RSVP'd for this already. We need to make sure that we have an accurate count. So please RSVP if you have not. Mod dropping links to that right now. We're gonna have a lot of stuff going on. Critical Drinker will be there. Obviously FNT crew, Gary, Ryan, me. Geeks and Gamers, Star Wars Theory is going to be there. We're going to have other people hanging out with us as well. So please make sure that if you're interested, come see us at MegaCon. It's going to be great. Cannot wait.
Excited.
I'm excited.
Let's go.
You know what I'm not excited to talk about? Actually, I kind of am. Section 31, a Star Trek show. So let me set this up with a little bit of
Disparu will be there. That's right.
It's a movie. Sorry, it's a movie. It's a made-for-TV movie.
It was a show, and then it got truncated into
that's
a
part of
movie.
the history of this. So I'm sorry. The herstory. The herstory of STD is a series that flared up a few years ago. And then somebody finally got some penicillin and canceled it. But this is a spin-off show of a show that supposedly has not been decanonized. It has been taken out of a timeline. So it's still part of the overall Star Trek canon. But it seems through a cartoon that Star Trek Discovery has been splintered off into a different timeline, which I'm fine with. But I still watched it and I can't unsee it. So we have Emperor Philippa.
Isn't that the same thing? Like if it's been removed to a different timeline so it doesn't affect any events, then it's not part of the canon.
Hang on. I've got a question. Does it start part of the original timeline, and when does it splinter off to its new timeline?
Guys, this is a nerd conversation that can last 2 hours, but I don't give a fuck. I mean, like, they should have done this in the beginning. They should have made it part of the Kelvin timeline or its own timeline in the beginning, and it probably would have made a lot of things better. It still wouldn't have made the show better. The show itself sucks. Whatever timeline it's in, it sucks, and it happened. And this is a spin-off from it. The Terran Emperor, 62-year-old, great actress, not in this, great actress, Michelle Yeoh. And she's Space Hitler. She's killed billions of people. She eats Kelpians. She's a horrible person, but now she's just looking for a little bit of redemption. And
can I jump in just on that redemption part? Because they don't do anything to redeem her. And I haven't watched much of Discovery at all. And
you
so
didn't see her cry?
I'm introduced to this character murdering her family and then telling us that she has committed multiple genocides and nothing else.
Oh, murdering her family was nothing. Was nothing compared to what they... Dude, this was the Star Trek Discovery that had people drilling in the eyeballs and severed baby heads and crazy.
She ate eyeballs in this show.
In this show.
Like
she did in her club.
How did she kill her family? Was it with soup or was
Poison,
it just like
poison?
She just
her cooking was that
was
bad.
Was it like aromatherapy? I couldn't figure out what that was in that pot.
Well, I just wanted to die the whole movie, and then it fakes you out, and I was like, "Oh, good!" And then she's and so I hated it. I hated her the whole thing, and there was nothing to be invested in.
Yeah. So
they think that's what Section 31 is. They think Section 31 is evil, and therefore they can just do whatever they want. Section 31 at no point just wanted to do anything. They weren't evil people. They had the same values that the Federation did. They were just willing to go further. It was like, well, we won't break the Prime Directive. Well, they will if they think it's necessary.
Well,
if wiping out the Federation means they're breaking it, they will do it. But they've just taken, you can be a genocidal maniac and it's okay. It's like,
some kind of Section 31.
That was
How
pretty
many
much what.
sections are there?
So before we get into that, let me finish my preamble to set everything up, which is Star Trek Discovery ended at season 5. They had always promised this season, Section 31, since season 2, which was 2018, 2019. So this was going to happen, and then it never happened. Then Michelle Yeoh, however you pronounce it, wins an Academy Award, and all of a sudden they turn it into a movie. They paid her the budget of Godzilla -1 to be in it.
It's so wild because I agree with you, Gary. Like there's like I've seen stuff that she is a great actress in.
She is.
But to hire a 62-year-old Michelle Yeoh, I don't know.
She doesn't look it 'cause she's
X-ray girl can
Asian.
tell me how to pronounce it. But to hire her to be basically this action star genocidal emperor is
it's a tough sell.
A weird casting.
It's a
It
tough
doesn't
sell.
make any sense.
And they tried to push her as a femme fatale throughout the entire show.
Mhm.
Like the outfits they're wearing, things like that.
Yeah.
Wasn't
It's
working.
obvious why she was cast.
Well,
Just say
and I
it.
think
It's identity politics.
Well,
That's what
yeah,
it is.
Yeah, but you could hire fucking a 35-year-old Asian woman to do that, right? You know what I mean? Like that
still wouldn't be good.
Well,
China.
can we discuss the elephant in the room that the younger version of her spoke better English than the older version of her?
She developed an accent over
and
time.
had a British accent with that too. So
Yeah.
that was a little odd. So she was paid $12 million to be in this, and it's clearly a bottle episode. It was like shot for nothing. It was shot on like sets. I think they went outside a couple of times. It's pretty
Variety covered that. They used Strange New World sets and sets from the other TV series to keep the cost down. I think they said this is like the cheapest thing they've ever done for this.
And it looked like it.
But at the same time,
but so it had some of the worst writers from Star Trek Discovery. Byo-Yo Kim. I remember that name from some of the the worst of the worst of the worst of STD. So like it almost feels like a held over script that they kind of just put down into one movie. Whatever it was a lot of holdovers from 2018's Star Trek Discovery, and that's exactly how it felt. It starts out with a young Philippa Georgiou, and she has to kill her family to become emperor, and then she makes her lover a slave, and that was the whole flashback part. And then all of a sudden so the timeline is what's interesting here, Robert. Is I was really curious about like where she was and where this takes place. It takes place during Next Generation timeline, 2350, 2340. So okay. Robert can probably decipher star dates in his head.
No.
I cannot. And so I went to the star date calculator that I found online, and the star date that they put up front was April 17th, 2000 or 2342. 2342. I don't know if that's right or not. But so this takes place when Picard is about, I don't know, in his late 30s, early 40s. So we're in Next Generation territory with this one.
So Patrick Stewart looks the same.
Probably looks the same.
Yeah.
Probably looks the same. So I was like, is this going to affect anything? But the show's called Section 31, which has like, its origins from what, DS9. It was mentioned in
it was introduced in the 6th season of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Yep, it's in Enterprise too, right? So
yeah,
and it's supposed to be a super secret organization. This super secret organization now has badges. Membership cards. They can identify each other.
Explode a lot of things.
They hire idiots. They hire.
I was going to say
morons.
Goofy retards that can't even control themselves. They have no sense of competence.
Have
at
a
all.
debate over Godsend, whether it's God's End or God's Send. Oh, isn't that so funny?
The whole movie.
Yeah.
This was clearly Kurtzman going, we need to have our own Suicide Squad. Like, let's get an Australian guy in there
Guardians
that's
of the
silly.
Galaxy.
And yeah, like both of those together, and let's just have quippy like one-liners constantly. And they can all talk like Gen Zs.
At this point, who's still watching Star Trek? That's a serious question. Like, who is still watching this
just
shit?
us right here. That's
I have not heard of this show until now.
Robert, can you answer that question? Who's still watching Star Trek?
Well, there is a small, I think, devoted fan base to these modern. I mean, here's the thing. I want to preface these statements by saying, look, Star Trek debuted 1966, And like the Bond films, people discover James Bond at different parts of their lives in different generations, and everybody has their favorite Bond. So Star Trek has kind of been something people have been able to discover on their own since then. But I would say one of the problems with modern Star Trek is I call it a product of fraudulent creation. At first, you know, when they brought back the Star Trek, the bad robot era, which started in 2009, what did they do? They decided, let's go back and retell the first tale of Kirk and Spock meeting. Up until this point, Star Trek had either gone forward or gone back and created all new characters, different situations. You went from the original series to Next Generation, which was like 100 years later. Then you went to Deep Space Nine. Then you went to Voyager. Then you went back and did Enterprise, which is a prequel that showed the founding of the Federation. So all of Star Trek from 66 to 2005 was doing something new, creating new characters, new situations, delving into that whole universe. And it represented multi generations of storytelling going through the latter half of 20th century America. Well, then they make the decision in 2009 to go back for the very first time in Star Trek history and retell the story of Kirk and Spock and turn them into people that might be, as they thought, more appealing to a younger generation. They're constantly going after an audience that I would dare say does not exist. They're trying to make Star Trek appeal to an audience that isn't interested. They think that, look, when I was a little kid, Star Trek appealed to me when I was 5. And it was an adult show, but I liked it when I was a little kid. And I think most of us, Gary, you were probably younger when you started watching Star Trek. It appealed to you even then. You didn't have to have a show pander to you as a child to get you interested in it. Star Trek never had to do that. And that's since 2009, everyone has tried to change fundamentally what Star Trek is to appeal to this younger audience who, by the way, ironically, is not Chiron.
It's like a black and white cookie.
What the hell is even that?
That's a Chiron.
That is the gay.
That is a Chiron.
To your point,
and it should have a rainbow flag on side of its face.
Well, this harks back to a third season, a 68, 69 episode. I don't mean that in a sexual way. The actual 1968, 1969. An episode about the most blatantly overt, hit you over the head didactic episode of Star Trek where a race of people from this planet was white on one side and black on the other, and then some of them were black on one side and white on the other, and they hated each other, and the last two that existed killed each other. And it was obviously about racism. So as this show, as Star Trek now is wont to do, they just cherry pick. We had a Delton from Star Trek the Motion Picture in this.
Yes.
We had someone from Chiron in this. You had Rachel Garrett, who was a great character introduced in the third season of Next Generation as the captain of the ill-fated Enterprise C. They just willy-nilly. It's like they read BuzzFeed articles and go, "Oh, let's put this in. Let's put this in." With no context, and you're supposed to go, that's all they think of Star Trek fans. Hey, well, just put this in and put this in. And people go, wow, look.
That's where Star Wars is the same thing. It's people that own the property, that don't understand the property, hiring people to write it, that again don't understand the property or the audience or anything that has to do with it. They're just like, what is Star Trek? Let's Google let's do that alien. Let's do that alien.
Even this looks like the Star Wars cantina almost.
Yeah.
I think that, I have certainly not seen nearly as many of the new Star Trek projects as I have seen the Star Wars ones. But I think on average, based on the response I've seen in some of the reviews and all I don't care about Star Trek as much, so it doesn't bother me nearly as much. But I feel like as bad as Disney Star Wars is, it feels like Star Trek is in actually a much worse place.
It is.
Than Disney Star Wars.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on Doctor Who, which is worse than this.
Well, like to Robert's point, I watched The Next Generation with my family when I was a teenager. The Borg whole episode, all those freaked me the fuck out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it drew you in, and my whole family, we would look forward to The Next Generation every week. It wasn't anything like that was pandering to anyone. It was just Star Trek, and it was telling a good story, and it was telling stories about space exploration and all of this. And now, like, who the hell is watching this? I don't know a single person, not on this panel anyway, It has in like I never see it on my Twitter feed. I never see it on YouTube. I never see anyone talking about Star Trek. Never. No one talks about this.
No.
The Federation had strong values, and Section 31 was meant to go, what happens when those are not enough? What happens when you meet someone that doesn't care, and it will put you in a position where you either die or you stand by your morals? And people like Picard will go, I'd rather die. So Section 31 was there to protect people from themselves. But not only did this not have any of that in, the plot doesn't even make sense in itself. Like, they had a thing that destroyed an entire quadrant of the universe and thought, that's not enough. We're going to have to have an invasion from a parallel dimension, and then we're going to not detonate it in one quadrant, we're going to detonate in the middle and blow two quadrants off, and somehow stops itself.
Yes. We'll get to that very end, which is horrible. And I have a lot of questions.
White males in this show, by the way. I haven't seen one.
Yeah, there's half of one. The half one.
There he is.
Okay, so when
discount Chris Pratt.
So when a white male shows up when a white man outside of Strange New Worlds, when a white dude shows up in Kurtzman Trek, he's either dumb or dead.
And evil.
Both.
And the bad guy. You knew he was the bad
This
guy.
is the thing. When they started asking who is the mole, who is going to betray them, I was like, okay, it's going to be
there.
we
know.
But it wasn't purely based on the color of their skin. I predicted.
wasn't, though.
I know, but
It was the other white guy.
It was the other white guy, but they used him as well as part of it.
Yeah, so they had a guy in a mech suit. They had a Deltan. They had a shapeshifter. They had a Vulcan robot that's controlled by a nanokin, and it's the laughing, emotional Vulcan thing that they really love to do.
I love
to do it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Total lack of understanding of Vulcans everywhere in modern Star Trek.
Understanding of physics. Like, they went, small things that survive big explode. No, they don't. What are you even on about?
Yeah, they're not in the quantum realm. They're still around.
The fire goes everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of it. You just...
I like when he came back with the southern accent at the end.
Oh my god!
Oh, and he's a woman.
It's
a female of the species inside him. Yeah,
it's a female inside a male robot body.
Yeah. What's the messaging there?
Also, the music throughout this entire movie was so off-putting and strange to the point where about 2/3 through the movie, when they were trying to finally fix that engine or whatever that they needed to fix, that was the first time you heard any semblance of Star Trek music, and it felt fucking weird.
It was an abomination.
The entire rest of the movie was like modern.
Dude, the rest of the movie, at no point did this feel like a Star Trek movie at all. The sound effects didn't feel like Star Trek. The music didn't feel like Star Trek. And then at the end, they had the fucking audacity to play the theme to Star Trek. I was like, get the fuck out of here. Like, fuck you.
The Alexander Courage.
It honestly felt more like Rebel Moon when watching it.
Yes.
It had a lot of Rebel Moon
energy with like a way less budget.
Especially the opening sequence.
Yeah.
And okay, Robert and I are big fans of ship porn. We are the ship porn experts.
Sounds like saying shit.
You might sounds like the wrong thing, buddy.
Spaceship porn. Spaceship porn.
Know about?
If you go over my internet history, you'll see me looking at the Enterprise refit.
No.
I'm right there.
That's what they call it, Gary.
Not only is that clips, Gary, you throw Robert right up to the front.
Why would you admit that?
I am
So
a
what
big
is the
shipper.
Enterprise refit that you're talking about?
Well,
here,
let me
Gary?
tell you.
Beautiful thing in the universe.
Yes, it's gorgeous.
2 Vulcans, 1 cup.
And the ship. That's good, X-Ray girl. Wise usage of your words. No, the ship in this looks like they all look like jagged pieces of metal, dude. Like, what the fuck?
Terrible. I mean, there's nothing about you know what's really okay. In the original series, they did a few great spy episodes. And there's an episode in the 3rd season of the original Star Trek called The Enterprise Incident, when it seems that Kirk is off his rocker. They go into Romulan space. They're immediately surrounded by the Romulans. And there's a female Romulan commander who seems to fall in love with Spock. And the whole thing is a ruse so they can rip off a cloaking device from the Romulans because it represents a clear and present danger to the Federation.
Yep.
It's so much fun. It's playing on our characters are playing against one another. You see Spock seduce a woman, which you've never seen before. You see Kirk, they actually surgically alter him to look like a Romulan. It is so much fun. And that was done in 1969. Now, if you want to do a spy thriller, which is what they supposedly want to do, you could look at The Dirty Dozen, you could look at John le Carré, you could look at a million things that are being done right now, or even look at a crime show like Breaking Bad. But instead, they give us something that looks like Roger Corman made it in 1982.
Mm-hmm.
And you ask yourself, who are the people writing this? And why do they think that this is appealing to the very audience they're trying to appeal to?
And they
the
weren't.
Audience, we want stuff that's cool, man.
The entire thing is shallow. Like in this scene itself, they describe all the characters as their own stereotypes. This is the guy who's got as a disguise. This is the guy who. This is the woman who's the femme fatale. This is the strange, wacky one. This is the strong arm guy. I think that was the only depth they'd put in the characters the entire thing.
The introduction of these characters was so clunky, and especially when that guy on the left there, he starts to give his tortured backstory and just monologue, and it's like they do not know how to naturally introduce characters in a genuine way at all throughout this thing.
It felt like when you're watching a 2.5-minute trailer for a game that's like a couple months from being released, and they give you a quick breakdown on the crew, right? And like your little bullet points. That's what it felt like.
And then as they're introducing these characters, I'm sitting there wondering, if this is a problem, why is Section 32? Because Disparu explained it perfectly. Section 32 usually was the
31.
organization that would go 31, whatever. That would go further. That would go further than the Federation. This is a problem that you'd think that they'd be putting like a ship on board. The Federation would be handling it. Why does this justify Section 32 onto this job?
Well, there were borders. The explanation they give for that is justified.
The borders,
the borders.
You can't just send a military ship into a foreign nation and expect them to.
But also, they were presented as black-clad, persons. Like I was looking up the images. Like William Sadler, I forgot, had played one of the agents. Like when
Sloan. He was in Deep Space Nine. There was one. He was the one guy that represented Section 31, and you didn't know anything about them. Neither did our characters. And that was the whole thing. When he showed up, he was just one guy. You didn't know what he represented. And in this show, they had to go off and decide, okay, we're gonna give them their own badges, we're gonna give them a headquarters, we're gonna give them their own ships, because the limitless thinkers or the limited thinkers that make these shows don't understand Section 31 isn't the CIA. It's not the FBI, it's not MI6. It's something totally different. It's more along the lines of something you might have found in the X-Files or something like in the Manchurian Candidate or something like that. But they have no understanding of this. And I'll give you an example. The second time you saw Section 31 in Deep Space Nine, there was an episode called, and I always mispronounce this. It's called Inter Arma Enim Silent Lieges. And that is something that Cicero from antiquity said, and it's Latin for in times of war, the law falls silent. And that was what Section 31 was all about. I mean, in times of war, the Dominion War in Deep Space Nine, that's when we first saw Section 31. And that was sort of their mandate. I mean, we went from an episode of Star Trek that's Latin and something that Cicero would have said to this swill. And you have to ask, you ask yourself, who are the people that are writing this garbage when they could just go back and watch, 4 episodes of Deep Space Nine and see something that this is like a second grader wrote it compared to the original college philosophy course that came up with Section 31 in the first place. When I watch this stuff, I think to myself, why am I watching work that is done by people that clearly haven't done their homework? They're spending money frivolously, and they have the writing ability of what I had, back when I was still eating paste.
You're a bad bitch.
You're talking about 4 years ago, Robert.
Can I ask the Star Trek fans a question? So,
dialogue, bro.
As a Star Trek, I wouldn't even call myself a normie, but I'm not a Star Trek guy. But I like Star Trek 2009. I like JJ Star Trek 2009. Does the current state of Star Trek make you look back and at least go, it was bad, but it's not nearly where this is with the Star Trek?
Neither
JJ.
of them were Star Trek. I think that's the thing. To me, it's like Craig's Bond films. Like I can appreciate that people might like them as movies and might be good movies, but they're not Bond movies.
Right.
And I felt that way with the 2009 things. With the whole
Casino Royale was.
With the
Casino Royale
whole
was great.
complexity of Section 31, it was interesting because even as they were spies, they would meet people and they would let you just tell all of your staff about them. But whenever they researched Section 31, it was like they weren't there. They were in this, the very first scene, they're blowing stuff up, they're going through walls. Hundreds of people see them. Like, there's no way, like, Section 31 is supposed to be a myth. Like, it's the kind of thing that's whispered about in hallways. And I was like, no, you're insane. But don't push it. Don't research it too much. So they knew enough to be scared. And nothing carries over in this.
No, it's an intersectional nightmare, this show. And again, it's a carryover from 2018. So, you talked about the borders. The Federation's not supposed to cross those borders. But I would argue that if you have a weapon that can blow up a quadrant, that they might want to enter the equation at this point. It's like, no, we'll just let these 5 people handle it.
They didn't know.
That was actually my point, because there are episodes in Next Gen and everything like that where
so would
Picard
Rachel
would be
Garrett
removed
let them
from the-
know?
Yeah.
Oh, look,
but
it's Mahler.
There was an episode where
They
Picard was
coincidentally, the
removed
ship broke at that point.
Also, too, like it could have been actual Section 31, but instead they said the Suicide Squad, whatever the hell this nonsense is. Like, imagine if they had written the
group
show.
of retards.
Yeah, imagine if they had written the show instead, like what Section 31 was originally established to be in DS9. Like that actually could have been a really, really cool story, but instead we get discount.
They weren't
Suicide Squad.
They weren't interested in writing a cool story. This was content to be put out because we can put Michelle Yeoh in it. Like I doubt much was concentration, talent, or anything was put into this other than getting her on it to make another movie so you can have another notch in your belt, because Kurtzman doesn't care, right? That Star Trek. Kurtzman Trek is Star Trek made by people who don't like Star Trek for people who don't like Star Trek. And Little Platoon had the best description of it yesterday on Open Bar. It's Star Trek for theater kids, because that's what Hollywood thinks that the modern audience is a bunch of theater kids.
There's also, one of the maddening things about this, when they talk about it destroys a whole quadrant, I don't think people understand how big that is.
That's big.
It would take tens of thousands of light years to cross a quadrant. If you exploded something that was traveling at the speed of light, it would take tens of thousands of years to destroy a quadrant. They don't get this. Yeah. They don't understand basic distances, and it's maddening. They had an episode back in the second season of Discovery where these red beacons,
yes,
all across the galaxy, and they all turned on at the same time. And this imaging system saw, look, these beacons, and they were all throughout the Milky Way galaxy, as if there was no distance or time at all. These lights just turned on. Well, if you know anything about distances, it's not like Earth. Light is traveling from one beacon. Maybe it takes 5,000 light years to get to you. Another one's going to take 100,000. You couldn't do that and have lights turn on. It's because the kids who are writing this, they're not even theater kids. They're junior high theater kids that haven't barely got out of a science course. And at least Star Trek always had, with all of their fictional science, they made you believe when they came up with something like the transporter had rules. It was a line of sight device. It wasn't magical. In Star Trek 09, they made the transporter magical. So you would believe in the fiction. I always say that the best fiction is the most truthful. These shows don't even bother to try and explain any of their gobbledygook that they're trying to shove down our throats all the time.
And
I mean,
you
if
know
I want
what's
something shoved down my throat, I want it. I don't want to have it.
The big problem in Hollywood.
I want it to be a massive ship.
I want a big warp spell.
Like with the machine that they attach to themselves and the thing, like to phase. Can someone maybe I don't know. Can someone explain to me why, as soon as you put that on, you don't fucking fall through the ship?
No.
And the object, there is no reason.
Right.
Sometimes
She was able to walk through walls, fine.
She trips over at one point and
say her
falls
foot
on the
gets
floor
caught.
and smacks into it. Like, no sense whatsoever.
Because they don't know. They don't stop and think to themselves, okay, if A, B, and C are true, D, E, and F must be true as well. And look, all of the things that we like, whether it's Lord of the Rings, whether it's Doctor Who, whether it's Star Wars, they make you believe. Like a sonic screwdriver has limitations. It can't just do anything. Well, I guess
Can
sometimes
now.
it can.
But before it could.
Force fields out
Didn't
of it
work
this
on
time.
wood.
But at one point, her leg gets stuck in the wall out of phase, and then she just pulls it out and it works fine again. I'm like, that could have been interesting
leg?
if she'd actually lost her leg. Yeah. But they weren't willing to do anything.
No,
for it.
and that weaponry would have come, or that defense mechanism would have come in really handy in future Star Trek episodes.
I mean, that's
I
a
guess that tech
useful
is lost.
thing.
And I think they're like, Dune did this cool phasing thing. Let's do it like that, but let's make it, we're like Vision.
That's why it feels like Rebel Moon, where Rebel Moon felt like a big amalgamation of all these other ideas that were not tweaked at all in any way. They were just put into a movie. This is doing the exact same thing with a way smaller budget.
And to Robert's point before, one of the enjoyment, like the things that you really love about sci-fi is them working with really interesting scientific theoretical concepts, and you get to see it depicted. And like that issue with not understanding time, we saw that with the Disney Star Wars sequel trilogy, where they had the Death Star thing destroying planets, and you're seeing it in real time as it's happening in other star systems. And they do not understand how that would take years for that vision to get there. And I had an experience recently where I'm watching something that it's an anime, and they understood it so much better. It's Star Blazers, where Earth is an apocalypse, and they have this ship that's now traveling away from Earth to try and save it. And they get to a point, and they want to look back on Earth, and they bring up the image, and it's an image of Earth about 50 years before, because they're so far away. That's what Earth would look like from their distance. And it was just like one of those where it was like, oh, they understand actual physics and how this works. I forgot that science fiction usually does that nowadays. But so there are things that do it, and Star Blazer. But it's just so funny that you have idiots writing this that are missing some of the most enjoyable parts about the genre.
Well, it's true. I think that one of the problems with Star Trek as a thing is it's very difficult. And I'll admit this. It's very difficult for, say, a writer or audiences today to go back and watch a science fiction show that debuted in 1966 and not see it as hokey. It's very difficult to go back and take the show seriously because of the style of effects, the style of acting, the set design, the cinematography. You have to train yourself to be able, and that's true of anything. You go back and we watch movies of the 40s and 50s, and you have to put yourself in the mindset to understand that the way people talk to each other is different. So I think it's and the way Star Trek has also been parodied in everything from The Simpsons to TV commercials with the Gorn and William Shatner. It's very, very hard to go back and take Star Trek seriously the way, and yet the people that, just like the Twilight Zone, the people that made the Twilight Zone and Star Trek, because of network standards and practices, they couldn't talk about the Vietnam War, for instance. So they would do a fantasy show where they could address the Vietnam War allegorically. We could go to a different planet where there literally was a battle going on between the hill people and the villagers, and they were being armed. The Klingons were arming the village people, and the Federation are like, are we going to arm the hill people so they can actually reach some kind of parity so they don't get slaughtered with these advanced weapons? So they could get away with that on Star Trek because they could go, we're on another planet. That's not us.
Yeah.
And Rod Serling did the same thing in the Twilight Zone. He could attack racism directly. And back in the late 50s and early 60s, you couldn't do that. They wouldn't let you do that on TV. But if it took place in the Twilight Zone, you could. So the storytelling was very highbrow, and it expected the audience to come up to the level of storytelling. The problem with all the people that are writing fantasy, especially allegorical fantasy, is they all think they're writing a Joss Whedon show.
Yes.
They all grew up watching Buffy and Angel, and that's all that's their level of writing. And it's really unfortunate because they themselves aren't able to come up to the level of intelligence and writing that the very people that created these shows were doing. And like Gary pointed out, Roddenberry was a World War II vet. Then he was on the LA police force. And a lot of these guys came back from World War II, and then they became writers. And they were writing novels and plays and screenplays and short stories. They were quote unquote real writers. And the people that are writing a lot of our fantasy shows today, They think that Buffy, I love Buffy, by the way. I think Buffy's a great show.
Yep.
I think Angel's a great show. But if that's all you ever watched,
that's your life experience. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
And you know, what do you have to bring to this? And they haven't even watched, I mean, the spy genre, again, a great literary genre. Read about the spy craft in World War II or World War I. And this could be such a rich show if it was written by people that put in the time and delved into the spy genre, or rather than just watch Guardians of the Galaxy and go, let's do that. Well, James Gunn's been a screenwriter for 30 years.
I think it's a philosophical thing. I wonder if that's what they're learning in their classes when they go to college is don't disregard the legacy of all these different genres and what builds those genres and like the pillars of those genres. Disregard that and make whatever is new, because everything is modern and we're trying to revamp everything. Is that coming from a source somewhere? That's what they're getting. That's because it seems to be this entire generation that is their philosophy in writing.
Everything is the patriarchy. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
Star Trek
they really seem to be trying to just emulate and copy Marvel humor, like especially those stupid gags about it's the godsend or what, and they couldn't figure out. It was cringe, and they couldn't even land that. But that seems to be their main inspiration. Not even Buffy. It's the more really modern, it's Marvel humor.
It's the basic understanding of Buffy of just watching clips on YouTube. That's where I think Kurtzman got a lot from Star Trek is clips on YouTube. Simple. If you want to explain what Robert and I were talking about before, we're talking about seeing light across long distances. This is something we covered on Forbidden Frontier. A simple Google search would have brought you quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is a phenomenon where particles can be linked even when separated by large distances. And you can play with that. You could
Yeah.
And light years. They're talking light years that these particles are linked. And it happens in real time. There's no time in between whatever interaction happens to them. I've been kicked out of 3 high schools, and I know that. So that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. But like Star Trek, Robert was just talking as a kid. Robert and I were watching Twilight Zone and Star Trek. These were adult shows, straight up adult shows. I didn't understand half of what I was watching when I was like 6, but I know it scared the shit out of me. But I liked it. It was interesting. And I started understanding, I rewatched the Twilight Zone obsessively for years. It's the greatest show ever written, period. But, and we're so far away from that. And it was what Robert brought up is those writers had jobs. They worked blue collar jobs. Tolkien, a lot of what's in Lord of the Rings is a melancholy. There's a melancholy of a dying age. And that's a melancholy that he gets from fighting in a real war and watching all his friends die, and that seeps into the story because that's real life experience. That's real. And the experience we have now is I watched a couple episodes of Buffy and some clips on YouTube. It's bad. And a lot of what brought that in was DEI restrictions. And they've gotten rid of a lot of the old guard who knew what the hell they were doing, getting rid of meritocracy. And this is what we're left with. And unfortunately, we lost Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who. Damn, it's questionable if we lost Marvel. It's looking that way right now. We don't know if DC can get off the ground. Hope it can.
Lost the comics for sure.
It affected the end of Game of Thrones. It affected Lord of the Rings. It affected The Witcher. It's affected so many things. It's countless. I don't know what's left, to be honest with you.
By the way, somebody in the chat asks, how many miles is a light year?
Oh.
It's about 6 trillion miles.
Whoa.
One light year is about 6
That's a long
trillion.
And Jeremy would drive it rather than fly in a ship.
I saw somebody else being like, that doesn't make sense. You guys know light years a measure of distance, not time. It's like, yeah, no shit, motherfucker. It's the amount of time that at light speed, at the speed of light, that something would take to go 1 year. That's what the distance is.
Hey, Ryan, what did you do in the Navy again?
I worked on nuclear reactors.
You worked on nuclear, so you had to be kind of smart to do that.
Relatively.
I
worked with some dumb motherfuckers, but
that's good to hear.
Just an example of this show not understanding even Star Trek technology because they would rather have some kind of goofy sequence is the base that we're looking at here. It's buried like their main, where they plan all their stuff. It's buried miles in the center of this planet or whatever, and they have to travel on this rickety, I don't know, weird platform to get from point A to point B. And I'm wondering what happened to their transporters. Like you would go to all this trouble to make all these, platforms and resources when a transporter would have been way cheaper and easier to install. But instead of remembering that they have technology for that, they was like, oh, we want a sequence of them on these platforms to have a really bad action spot. And so they forget the lore of the universe.
You can't be a dummy. Literally a scene in this. There's literally a scene in this where they go, let's go to the cargo hold. Cuts over to the other base, and they're there. And I'm like, what happened in the middle? Like, you never said you were going back.
They cut it out for time. They cut it out for time.
Yeah.
You can't be a dummy and write Star Trek. And Robert, I saw your tweet, and you're right. You to write Star Trek, you need to love. Well, you said to love to fuck, but also you need to love Star Trek. You need to love the passion of life, and be inspirational. That's the hardest thing to be as a writer, as a creative, that I've witnessed is being inspirational.
It's about the love of existence, the love of being alive. I mean, I use the F word as a euphemism, but unless you have that element of passion within you, which should spill over. The whole reason why tell stories, we tell stories to hopefully convey human truths in an interesting packet. Whenever we relate something that happened to us, we're hoping that we can convey that and it means something to somebody else. Like, you understand what we went through. Like, when you tell a friend of yours something that happened to you that day, you hope your friend understands what it meant to you by the way you told the story. And one of the great things about Star Trek, at least as it used to be, was the allegorical stories that it told. It would offer insights into the audience, like, wow, if this happened to me, how would I feel? And through the course of a Star Trek episode, you are trying to second guess what are the characters doing? Would I do that? And at the end of the episode, how would I feel? And that's what I think great fiction does. It takes you on some kind of a journey, but it has to, like, for instance, Philippa Georgiou, this character that Michelle Yeoh plays, she's from a mirror universe.
Mm-hmm.
And she's now been brought into our universe. Well, what they've done is they've literally made her a mustache twirling villainess. She never reflects back on the kind of person she was, like we talked about, no redemption at all. But what is a person that comes from a universe where the morality is completely opposite to what ours is? How does a person like that get by in our universe? And in the original time when they introduced the mirror universe, Spock makes a comment, because Kirk and Spock were transposed, and Spock says it's a lot harder for a barbarian to act like a civilized person than it is for a civilized person to act like a barbarian. And this was a point that was made in 1967 in Star Trek, and they never even try and address that kind of a concept.
They can't address their own canon, Robert. So you remember from Star Trek Discovery Season 1, what was the giveaway that I'm forgetting the captain's name, that he was from the mirror universe. He had to put Lorca. God, it's been so long.
I know.
The light is different in the mirror universe, so he had to put these eye drops in or whatever all the time. Right. And they just completely forgot about that. Another thing that, and maybe I'm wrong on this one, so that's why I'm going to bring it up to Robert, because I tried to memory hole.
It's sad that you're bringing it's sad that I even have spent so much of my time.
I'm trying to memory hole all my strange new worlds, but oh God, sorry, black guy, the one who looks like Common, says he's from the eugenic wars, and he specifically says he was born in the 20th century. I thought those eugenic wars got moved to the 21st century.
Yes, they did. That's another thing. In this timeline, we saw in Strange New Worlds that here's another dumb thing that the producers of Star Trek have said, that all of the continuity that was set up in the original Star Trek, which is all fictitious. Did anyone believe that Star Trek was ever real? Was it supposed to be our history? No, it was similar, but it's an alternate universe. But the producers of modern Star Trek think that in order for audiences to be interested, that they have to make our real history that we're living through now. They have to keep adding it to the show's backstory. So as our history moves forward, because Star Trek started in 1966, that they keep having to change things. So in the Star Trek universe, the eugenics wars took place in the 1990s. Well, not anymore, because they're like, well, we lived through the 90s and there really wasn't a eugenics wars. Well, I think anybody watching, I knew at 5 years old that we weren't going to have eugenics wars in the 1990s because it was a fictional show. It had a fictional backstory. There were no nuclear weapons platforms either. And it's just so dumb and wrong-headed. And yeah, so what you're saying, Gary, is they forgot about that.
Yes.
And in the continuity of this episode, they contradicted their own continuity that they've retconned from the original Star Trek continuity. It's like,
yes,
it would be like, well, Back to the Future, that doesn't make any sense anymore because we lived through 2015 or whatever, and that didn't happen.
There was no almanac.
Yeah,
we don't have hoverboards.
The Cubs almost made it to the World Series around the same time.
They did.
Interestingly
in
enough,
2016, they came damn close.
Yeah,
but that's exactly right, Ryan. It's like, oh, we have to go back and retcon Back to the Future because Back to the Future 2 didn't happen that way.
Yeah. I think it's more the fact that
I think they would do that if they remade it.
I think it's more the fact that the writers can't imagine a world that they haven't lived through. Like the enemies in this are simply, what's the worst thing they can imagine? Well, it's colonialism and racism, and so that's the entire enemy empire. They've literally just used the only two pieces of history they know about and projected it as the villain. So it's got no moral complexity. And with the barbarian and the civilized thing, they think that Section 31 are the barbarians. They are the civilized people. They're looking at the Federation going, you are basically children. Your morality hasn't evolved enough to survive in this world. And so we are the more complex people that will do the hard work so that we can preserve your innocence how it is and you don't need to become us. And
that's a wonderful
interesting.
point. What a great point to make.
In this, the entire arc of the show is, and she even says it, the only person that can outsmart me is me.
I wrote that down.
Peak feminism at the time.
Yeah.
She literally does outsmart herself at the end. They like that's the entire arc of the movie.
Dude,
you want about they contradict timelines. They contradict the motivations of the villains in this thing. Because at first they're like, okay, so they're coming for the weapon. Then they're coming for the resources of our universe. Then they're coming for the weapons so they can detonate it, so they can get the resources that they're going to blow up with the weapon. And like, just pick one. You're overcomplicating it and contradicting something you said 5 minutes ago because you can't decide.
And their attitude towards Star Trek fans is, why do you care about this stuff? And it's like, why are you fucking making it if that's your attitude? Like, it's ridiculous. So you could interpret that as the canon is erased, or you could interpret it as they didn't bother to check their own fucking canon. I would guess the latter, that like they just didn't do the research on their own fucking show. But
they didn't even do the research into Section 31 itself.
No.
Yeah.
Gary, I would say, is it possible that, because he's talked about being frozen in time, right? Is it possible that he was born in the late 20th century and then in the 21st century when they said the eugenic wars happened, that is when...
Did they move it 100 years? I can't remember how far they moved it to.
No,
the 21st.
well, they don't know because Khan is like a little boy in the 2020s now, whereas Khan took over the world and he ran a quarter of the world's population in 1996.
Yeah.
Which is what's so interesting is that anybody who loves fiction, whether it's Middle Earth, take whatever fictional universe you love. Part of the fun of reading fantasy fiction, science fiction, is the world building. And alternative histories are a big genre in science fiction literature.
Yeah. Love them.
Everybody gets it. We saw like shows like The Man in the High Castle, you know, where the Allies were defeated in World War II. Everybody understands that concept. We all get it. So this idea that they think the audience is too dumb to go with that, to go with this, to stick with their own fictional backstory is really frustrating. And what these writers are telling the audience is, we don't care about you. We just don't care. And which means they don't care about their own IP. I would say that writing like this show, if I was a shareholder and, you know, the Skydance deal with Paramount, I would say every one of these bad shows chips away at the value of their own IP. Every time there's bad, the Book of Boba Fett destroyed a character that people have loved since 1980.
Yep.
When Boba Fett was introduced. And when that happens, you've diminished your entire franchise because Boba Fett was the basis of the Mandalorians. And now between the Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian season 3, well, the Mandalorians aren't so cool anymore. You guys have wrecked your own characters. And why do the corporate overlords put up with that? Because they don't know the difference.
They don't.
Yeah.
And that's why they shouldn't have their jobs.
Exactly. And it's going to get worse because it's tech bros coming in and taking over who watch even less of this stuff. None of the bankers who run these companies watch any of their, none of them do. None of them sit through an entire movie without checking their phone. None of them do. They have no idea what's going on. It's just content to them to put out. And yes, the fans are far more worried about the legacy of Star Trek and Star Wars than the people who paid billions to own them. And now, you know, Paramount's done so well with Kurtzman Trek. It's only $15 billion in debt, guys. And forced to sell. And forced
What even
to
is that?
And what's Robert, when's Skydance, they take over in the next few months. It's got to pass
they have
some
to,
government
I think, regulation
regulation.
things. Yeah, they've got all. But it's interesting because Skydance funded all of the Bad Robot era.
Yes, they did.
Star Trek movies too. And what's really interesting about that is when Bad Robot took over the Star Trek franchise, it was a business decision. They figured, okay, we have all the merchandising that comes along with it. We figured we're going to make a lot of money, and what Paramount told them, Bad Robot wanted to not sell any merchandise that was based on old Star Trek. They only wanted to sell merchandise that was based on Star Trek 09 and everything moving forward. And Paramount said, no, we're not going to do that. And so they were developing a video game. And in the middle of the production of that video game, basically Bad Robot abandoned that company and threw them under the bus, because they realized that their merchandise isn't going to sell. And Discovery, and moving forward, Strange New Worlds, all that stuff, there really is no Star Trek merchandise that's selling. They've killed all of the merchandise that they used to make a lot of money on. No one's buying stuff from the modern shows because they're not iconic. You don't
like
wanna...
the mobile phone? Sorry for interrupting.
Oh,
She's literally using a mobile phone as a scanner.
I mean,
It's a tricorder. Like there was a girl with a tricorder, and it was just a mobile phone. And that's another point where it's like, this isn't even Star Trek. They're not even trying.
They've driven into the ground in something that wasn't, I'm not going to say it was a money printing machine on the level of Star Wars or anything like that, but it was consistent income. It was a consistent revenue stream that came from a smaller audience, but that would buy the shit out of everything.
Yes. A small, loyal audience that kept up with it year after year, decade after decade. A lot of Star Trek books that are out there as well.
Tons. My God.
A lot of Star Trek books.
Yeah, a lot.
Hundreds.
And they said, hey, you guys that are dedicated, fuck you. Let's get rid of all that. And you're going to care about the new shit now. And the new shit has no connection to the old stuff.
No.
This could apply to so many properties. Holy
Absolutely.
shit. I mean, it's literally what happens to every single property.
Well, that's the bigger picture here.
It's a cautionary tale. They even did something. So the Star Trek Litverse had its own continuity.
Yeah.
And for 20 years, it did a really great job. You had a core group of authors, and the Litverse was great. When Picard came along, the first season of Picard, it contradicted that Litverse. And they went to all the authors, and I understand because books don't make the kind of money TV can make. But they basically said to these authors, we're going to end this continuity because this new show contradicts it all, and made them end it. Something that had been making money, admittedly not as much, but for 20 years. And even their gaming, like the Star Trek Online game, they keep having to sort of like put all this swill and incorporate it into the larger Star Trek mythology. No one likes it. So they're even polluting their successful merchandising with this ridiculous, ill-considered Star Trek since 2017. And they've undermined their own merchandise sales because they have to incorporate this garbage.
There's these retarded platforms, and the whole time, okay, so transporters aren't even around now. Okay, all right.
I did like the shapeshifter moment though in this scene where a guy gets knocked off and he transforms into like weird strands to save him.
Looks like
that
a
was the one
starfish.
cool thing that character did the entire lot.
So back to this horrible show. There's a lot of long fight scenes of 62-year-old 5'2" Michelle Yeoh, who's not super powered. Okay, hey,
No, it's just
she's
a lady.
badass in Crouching
Platforms.
Tiger. She's great in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. She's great in this. She is not convincing as a totalitarian Hitler who can kick the shit out of anybody, and she's fighting dudes off like no fucking problem at all.
Not just dudes, a robot.
A
This is
robot. A robot.
Two robots, a cyborg and a robot.
And on top of that, the choreography is ass. The camera work is terrible.
The camera was shaking the whole
It doesn't
time.
do her justice.
No,
That was
not
the-
at all. The fight scenes were some of the most boring crap in this show. I was just asleep.
But the jackets have pointy sleeves.
They do.
Yeah.
But Common had trouble with this robot. He almost got killed, but she like barely an inconvenience, you know. So, and yeah, there's a lot of fluff. There's a countdown clock. It's a lot of exposition. They sit down and tell you all their character motivation.
There's a McMuffin.
There is a McMuffin.
Can
Which
we slow down and just talk about that? Because once upon a
Yes.
time, a doomsday weapon had some thought put into it. It's like, all right, if you're going to have the energy to destroy a planet, you're going to have something really big, and that's going to be imposing. And that was the concept for the Death Star. And then we also got some backstory of how difficult it was to do. This is just a magical bullcrap device that can destroy what, a quarter of the friggin' galaxy? And it's this kind of like, what the hell are they even smoking? They haven't
they
earned
ruined-
and where do they stop at quarter of the galaxy? By the way, I'm hung
They
up
say
on that.
quadrant. Like it knows where the borders of the quadrant are.
Yeah,
It's
does
like,
it get to the
yeah.
other
Like,
quadrants a little bit? Or and
We
apparently
respect borders.
And apparently it's a directional device. Because I mean, I don't want to talk about this all night. We'll just go to the end. They decide to, for one, her lover that she had to burn the face of and make a slave, and then pretended to kill himself was the bad guy, which I think we all guessed the minute we saw him.
Yeah.
He's somehow Oh, by the way, all the Terrans from the Mirror Universe can go through a very convenient ion storm that makes a time portal that shows up at a certain amount of time that the Federation's never discovered, that the Terran Empire's never discovered. Works like clockwork, though. And that's how they were able to, one guy smuggled the device out and sold it to another guy who snuck out, or they snuck out together. And he was going to blow up the next generation timeline and have the Terran Empire come in and invade. That was the
Which
whole.
doesn't make sense.
No.
Because it was created so that no one would overthrow her because no one wants to rule over ashes.
So you'd
they're
still be
gonna come
ruling.
over, detonate it over there so they can rule over the
And
ashes.
it's like, I think it's important to point out that they needed to invade because they've exhausted all their resources. So they need to invade.
So they're going to destroy all the resources here so they can invade.
Not
us.
only do they need to invade, but they only invaded because you stole their super weapon, and it implies that if they hadn't stolen the super weapon, they wouldn't have invaded, despite the fact they needed the resources.
Super confused on that, but whatever.
How did they discover the portal? No one knows.
No one
They're
knows.
really big about resource destruction on this show. Like
They are.
when the Discovery went 1,000 years in the future, there was no more dilithium, so there was no more light, faster than light travel. But they didn't even realize that there's other modes of faster than light travel than their dilithium engines, and they can't. The thinking is so like this. Think about it.
Fossil
Destroy
fuels,
how
what
much the galaxy? You've destroyed all the resources. in
yeah,
the
not every
galaxy?
ship.
I mean,
Not every ship ran on dilithium, but
The Romulan Warbirds run on a miniature black hole.
Yeah.
yes, they do.
yes, they do. But they destroyed the Romulans. The Romulans are wiped out. But like
These writers don't know this shit,
dude.
They didn't look into it.
Dude,
Didn't even go to the wiki.
No. When I noped out of Kurtzman Trek, I checked in on Strange New Worlds and I watched it, but I'm like, I'm not doing fucking reviews. I can't break this shit because like when I do reviews, I have to watch the episode again, and sometimes multiple time in like little 5 minutes and take my notes. And so I can't do it. Was at the end of Star Trek Discovery season 3 when all the dilithium in the universe was destroyed. Because it somehow on a DNA level grafted itself to a retarded Kelpian who missed his mommy, and he cried, and it blew up every fucking ship. I'm like, what?
And the only
That's
thing
exactly what happened too.
The only thing that was required for the dilithium to merge with this guy is he crashed his ship on it. No one has ever crashed into dilithium
Robert,
ever in the history of the universe.
On that logic, because I grew up near San Onofre power plant, not far from it, that if I miss my mom too much, I could blow up every nuclear bomb.
Yeah. Although that power plant was.
Hey, everywhere. Everywhere I go, it reminds me of her. The nuclear tits.
The
We've already
nuclear
talked
boobs.
about that.
Yep.
The technology of a sci-fi world is important because it's the source for great plot and storytelling. There's an entire episode in Next Gen about the problems that are arising from the power source of the Romulan warbird because it runs on a mini black hole, and because it started to malfunction, it's throwing the time distance and rates off completely. And they have an entire episode based around that concept and technology, and they've just completely forgotten that there's separate technology to achieve warp drive. I can't this is the first time I'm hearing about this character.
Go ahead, Disparu. You were going to say
I was
something?
gonna say, Star Trek had episodes where they would just be in a shuttle, it would crash on a planet, and the entire episode is just in that shuttle.
Yes.
And like they spend an hour just making something out
Some
of a
of the
room.
best episodes are bottle episodes.
Bottle
Midnight in
episodes
Doctor
are
Who.
great.
Midnight in Doctor Who is like top 5 all-time episode, and it takes place inside a van. You know,
the
a
Doomsday
yeah.
Machine in Star Trek, they just redressed their standing sets, and it was a second starship that was fighting a Doomsday Machine and got wrecked. I mean, they were brilliant at that. There's a Deep Space Nine episode called Duet, which is the penultimate episode. It's basically two characters in a room, and one of them's a war criminal, and the other one is Kieran Reese. And you know, you look at this stuff, and it's like, did these people watch any of this? It's all right there. You know, it's fun. It's fun research.
I'm
not sure
Dude,
they would.
How
I'm not
great
sure
of
they
a
would understand it.
How fucking
Anyway.
great of a job! It's like I'm hired on Star Trek. Oh shit! I've got to watch all the Star Trek for my work, for my job. You're
Darn.
fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Jesus. But
the people that they hired, like they
don't like the
themselves
property.
do not like the property.
Yeah.
So it's
I
not
don't
fun
think
for
they can
them, so they don't
understand the
care.
property. I don't think
and they're
they
not
have a
smart
complex
enough.
enough morality to understand the problems in the first place. I think they just see racism and that's it.
I was hoping this weapon would wipe out, kill everybody. I was kind of hoping it would go off and kill the quadrant. So this giant weapon can kill a quadrant. We've got Philippa Georgiou fighting San, her ex-boyfriend, who like wants to kill her right up to the point where he accidentally, she kicks him and makes him kill himself, and then he says, "You were right all the time because you're a woman. I'm really sorry." And then,
oh no,
and
you
then
were teaching me to who I am.
Yeah. No, she's like, you made me. You taught me who I am, and it's like, what? You were
no
a slave.
reason.
What are you?
You were her slave.
The only thing that changed from him trying to kill her to going, "You've just changed my entire perspective on life," is he got stabbed. That was it.
Yeah, she kicked him and he got stabbed.
Then woman right.
So that's pretty much how it ends. So the bomb's going to go off, and Philippa Georgiou and Common are going to fly into the Ion Storm portal, time portal, and it's going to blow up. And there's a countdown clock. Well, they get beamed off last minute, and X-Ray Girl even asked, "Well, wouldn't that beam the bomb with them?" And I'm like, well, considering that if there's a tricorder on McCoy and there's a phaser on Kirk, and those get beamed, I'm thinking yes.
They were holding it. They were holding the Doomsday.
They were holding it. Yes, they were holding
when
it.
that happened?
Yes.
Well, and also, how about the fact that we've seen in Star Trek, there was an episode called Relics of the Next Generation where Scotty crashes on a Dyson sphere and he doesn't have enough food to survive. So he puts himself in the transporter buffer. He dematerializes himself, and it takes 75 years for somebody to come and rescue him, the Enterprise D.
Love that
And
episode.
they rematerialize him. If you have a Doomsday weapon like that, just dematerialize it. You can put it in the transporter buffer and never rematerialize it.
Mm-hmm.
Problem solved.
They steal that
Problem
for Strange
solved.
New Worlds as
but
well.
luckily, Robert, they must have dropped it right when they got beamed out last minute, and it blew up directionally. So it just closed the portal and probably blew the shit out of the Terran core. But somehow the explosion didn't reverse, or it didn't blow up 360 degrees and wipe out the quadrant. It just conventionally, just like they flushed it down the toilet.
Gary,
X-ray Girl described it as a fart. It was directional.
If this was like a black hole like type of situation or something like that, like then you might be able to like explain some of this and like why we blew it up there so it would be possibly contain. Who fucking knows? I don't know how this shit works because they didn't explain how any of it works. But just throwing ideas out there that would make it a little more reasonably feasible for this bomb to explode where it did and not do the damage the weapon was promised to do.
Oh, I don't know about you. When I want to, close or collapse a tunnel, I set off a nuke in it.
Yeah.
Watch the Starship Troopers.
Yeah, and it'll only blow one way, right? So
I'm not sure that it actually blew up the other side either.
I don't know either.
Collapse the tunnel because
That's-
none of
they're
them were
saying-
like, you realize you've just killed trillions of innocent people, right? Like that was never even mentioned.
it's not mentioned. They don't go, well, it just, I mean, a simple line maybe would have gone, it just collapsed the ion storm because of a tachyon field. I just make some shit up. But no,
Something.
they just,
He's like, I love a woman that can slaughter an entire quadrant of terrain.
They just fucking end it. They all
You're my
survive.
bad bitch.
They're back in the club. Yeah. Like lines like you're a bad bitch. Lines like, oh, that's really on brand for you. That's so Star Trek.
Oh my
right
God.
there.
That's what she said. She said you're a bad bitch at the end.
Yes.
Yes. I love that for us.
Oh.
She's in the Federation. Like, what is she talking like this for?
Everybody talks like a woke white woman from Burbank. I mean, that's going to be the future.
Yes.
Yeah, like a Gen Z.
Like a Jay-Z.
Like
a Jay-Z.
The thing about this is, I mean, these are writers that are getting paid pretty good to work on these shows. And I just wonder, how are they getting hired? Like how does somebody like give you this script? And I understand they were retconning, they were Frankensteining this out of what the series was going to be. But think about it, like, if you think about the great science fiction movies that we grew up watching, this doesn't pass muster. As I was sort of only kidding when I said it's like a Roger Corman or a Charlie Band movie from 1982. Science fiction has come so far in terms of like I was watching Torchwood's Children of Earth, which is a 5-episode series.
It's great.
That is infinitely better than this. And that was Torchwood, and that was done 15 years ago. And I would ask, how is it that shouldn't our entertainment be getting exponentially better? And you look at something like this, and it's how does this exist? Like, how is our civilization devolving? Do the people that are in charge of the money not know how awful this really is? Like, how do they not know? Their job, they have one job, which is to make entertainment. And when we live in a world where we've got The Sopranos and we've got Breaking Bad and we've got dozens of great TV shows, take your pick. There's great comedies out there. There's great crime thrillers. There's great fantasy shows. There's so much great writing. Why is it that Star Trek has to deal with this god-awful gobbledygook?
The wrong
So
people are in
long.
charge
People
of it.
at the top.
Yes.
Too many
Wrong
women.
No, I mean it's the wrong people. There are good TV shows right now. They're
A
going.
lot
on.
of them.
I forgot about
You're
this.
literally hiring the
Yeah.
wrong people to put in charge of these projects. That's
Oh,
simple
no.
as that.
And then there's, of course, yes.
This
She went
is-
from
this
Borderlands to this.
This
the
makes
Borderlands.
look Disney. This makes Disney Star Wars look good. This shit's.
Oh.
This looks bad.
It's bad.
Throwing
That's
her.
Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, I do appreciate Michelle Yeoh getting Jamie Lee Curtis to do that cameo, but even that
Jamie Lee
shatters
Curtis doesn't.
the verisimilitude.
Yes.
It's
Yes. Absolutely.
I think she actually tells them, "You'll be the death of my career." I
Yeah.
think that's one of the final lines or something close to it.
Accurate.
Well, meta.
But to your
that's-
point, Robert, DEI, of course, has been a problem with this. It's the culture, it's the toxic positivity, and as we've already mentioned, the wrong people getting hired, and they're in a bubble. Like the people who created this, no joke, they think this is brilliant. I'm sure they love it.
Yeah. No one wants to make something bad. This is the peak that they're capable of. They think this is good, and they don't understand why it isn't.
Yeah, it
And
comes
so
about
this is why
checklists.
they take it so personally when you go, "This is awful."
Yeah.
They can't comprehend it being
And
awful.
that's why they shouldn't have
Because
jobs.
they have their checklist. They have their checklist, and like, oh, but I checked all those boxes that I was supposed to check. It should be good.
Yeah, that's what they think quality is. The guy that wrote this is he's part of Watson. So, we're going, this is about the intelligence he can create, and now he's going to do a Sherlock Holmes thing.
Well,
Oh, great.
Great.
Also, they want to make another Star Trek film. They're supposed to be doing a Star Trek origin feature film now, and it's written by the guy who wrote something vampire hunter, you know, the
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham
Yeah,
Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln vampire hunter.
Seth something.
I can totally see the connection.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're going to go back and you're going to do the origins of, say, a post-scarcity culture, you know, you'd think you'd want somebody like Steve Zalian, who wrote, like, say, Schindler's List, to write a Star Trek story that we would get. I mean, the same was true of Star Trek and Star Wars. George Lucas was looking at things like Kurosawa movies, like Seven Samurai, one of the greatest movies ever made, as inspiration for Star Wars. Why aren't people looking at, why isn't somebody reading Winston Churchill's 5-volume history of World War II when they decide to make a Star Trek show?
That stuff was written.
Well,
that stuff was written by straight white men.
I think that's the philosophy. The philosophy is everything that's before me is bad and racist and
That's
evil.
why. I mean, I wish there was an executive order against prequels at this point, like even the good ones, because I'm sick of them. Because they want to go back and rewrite the history and use the baseline. So it's a lazy approach. It's like, we could still use some of this canon, but we'll screw it up so we can rewrite the history instead of moving forward. Star Trek, you could take this off. I'm tired of talking about this. Star Trek had an opportunity. I wasn't like all on board for Legacy, right? I like Star Trek Picard season 3. I liked it. That is an end, but there was a possible spin-off, Legacy, which united the fandom, what was left of it, more than I've seen in years, and it got shit canned by Kurtzman because of his fucking ego, because he wasn't involved in that. He wasn't happy that he got Terry Matalas made him look bad. And he'd
have to share the co-creator credit with Matalas.
And he let him go. And instead, we're getting Starfleet Academy, which is described as the Harry Potter of Star Trek. The Harry Potter of Star Trek. How about the fucking Star Trek of Star Trek?
One of the panels described Michelle Yeoh as Brat during the section.
That makes sense. That makes sense considering the dialogue that's in this movie.
She a bad bitch, yo.
It's going to be just as successful as the other Brat that we had this year.
There was a conversation about you like chaos. Oh yeah, I'd like to make out with chaos or whatever that conversation was.
Yeah,
it was a weird analogy
Chaos
on
is friends with benefits. Let's get messy.
That's what. Yeah.
And like Robert, you brought up a great point when you were talking about, like, hey, if you're gonna do something like this, look into all this different spy genre stuff that's been very successful. Look into that, and you can do that within all of these franchises, right? Because there comes a time you're like, okay, let's do something a little bit different. Let's do something in the Star Trek world, but it's going to be a Prison Break episode. It's going to be a spy thing. It's going to be a robbery, whatever it might be, and you want to like pull inspiration from great things. An example. Michael Stackpole was the author of the X-Wing novels.
Those are so good.
They were amazing. And the reason they were great is not because, oh my gosh, look at all the Star Wars references they put in it, or because of this. It was great because Michael Stackpole wanted to do Rogue Squadron books about a squadron of starfighters. And he essentially decided it was going to be inspired by World War II fighters, right?
Yep.
By people that were in dogfights, people that were, you know, the rate of return for these people was not great. You knew there's a great chance you were going to die if you survived 5 missions. That was almost unheard of. And he brought all of those things from historical references. He studied dogfighting. He studied actual airplane fights. And he used all of that. One of the things that so many people recognize and understand as part of like air battles. And he used that as his inspiration for the baseline of this Star Wars story. So, yes, you have a story in the Star Wars universe, and there's connection to this, connection to that. But at its heart, it's about this group of pilots who know that they're going on essentially suicide missions, that they're the best of the best, but they're also going up against the best of the best, very tough missions, a lot of death involved, and all of those things and everything that goes with that. Well, so every time they suited up, they knew that could potentially be their last time going out. And that's what made it such a great storyline.
100%.
Yeah.
And that comes out of reality. And I've often said all the best fiction's the most truthful. One of the things that frustrated me, say, about like Book of Boba Fett was the idea of a crime boss. Jabba the Hutt's gone. There's a power vacuum that Boba Fett, who had always worked for somebody else, he was a bounty hunter, work for hire, now has an opportunity to make a name for himself, create an empire. And if you wanted to, you could look at actual gangsters in the history. How did the bootleggers work in 1920s Chicago, for instance? People like Al Capone, the Outfit. Vito Corleone and The Godfather. How did the Italian mobsters who came over as immigrants build their power base? Or look at movies.
Vending
Christopher Walken,
machines.
King of New York. Yeah, well, that's the same kind of thing. That's a great example, though. So what would Boba Fett, what would be the equivalent of vending machines or taking over the gambling, or what would he do in the Star Wars universe? And there's so many rich opportunities for clever writers to take real history and real events and then apply them to fantasy contexts. Tolkien, the idea of the natural world being destroyed by industrialization, what Saruman was doing, at Isengard. I mean, all of that came out of reality. And it's like, if you're just making a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of whatever fantasy ridiculousness this garbage swill is, you're never going to make your audience believe, because the audience has to have some anchor to the world that they understand and know for fantasy to become relevant or interesting. And they don't know this. They don't try it. And Star Trek used to be the pinnacle of that, because it was written by people that actually fought in World War II. So when they would do the Enterprise is going after a cloaked Romulan vessel, it was like a submarine thriller. They had all this reality. Now we're just watching copies of copies of copies of copies, and it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
There's no reality to it at all.
That's where we're at. Speaking of copies of copies, this is kind of a copy. Captain America 4 is coming out.
Captain African American.
Captain
Say it
African
right,
American.
Harry.
The Captain America sequel without Captain America is coming out. And there's been a lot of scuttlebutt about the budget, which has been reported to be previously anywhere between what, 350 and 370
350 to 375.
375. Probably because they shot the entire movie twice.
Whoa.
Removed entire sections, removed entire characters, brought on and new characters. Who knows who's in this? There'll probably be some actors who probably don't know that they've been cut out, and Disney Marvel came out recently and said was it the Hollywood Reporter? I missed that one.
It's through the Hollywood Reporter. Yeah.
It doesn't matter, because Deadline, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, IndieWire, and Rolling Stone are all owned by Penske Media, same company. They came out and said it cost $180 million.
And so what that means is Marvel told them that's what it costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why, so when you look at the trades, right, the reputable trades like that, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, Variety, whatever, if it's a casting announcement or a director signing on for a project, well, the reason they're putting that out there is because they were told by the studio that that's what's happening.
Yep.
Right. When it comes to this and reporting a budget, they were told by the studio that's what the budget is, and that's what they put out there. The problem when it comes to Marvel specifically is that for the past 5 years at a minimum, they've lied about all of their budgets related to the Marvel movies. Now, the only ones that we can prove they lied on were the ones that were filmed in the UK.
Yep.
Because that's the only place that they're forced to publicly reveal on tax documents how and why they got this tax break and things like that. It's a little bit different there. Other places you can film here in the United States, you can still get a tax break, but it doesn't get released publicly in these ways. But in the UK, we get that data. So it's like what I'm pulled up. I can share my screen.
I think there's something else too and when I saw this reported the other day, I wondered if they've actually gone back and they have they've completely written off the original version of this movie. So this $180 million is the budget for the third iteration of Captain America.
Wow.
Well,
because remember, they were making it as it started out as New World Order. So New World Order, they could have spent when they're in Hollywood, if they're making a movie, right? Say they've tried to make a Logan's Run remake for 30 years. They hire a director, they hire a writer, and they spend a bunch of money.
And they form a corporation. They form a corporation.
Yes. They form an LLC. Mm-hmm. They spend all that money. If they decide not to make the film, that movie is either going to be then charged off on the budget of the movie that eventually gets made, or it goes into the creative accounting transom somewhere. So when they're reporting $180 million budget, the various iterations of Captain. I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but they could have, like you said, Gary, started new LLCs. And so the movie they've finished on paper costs $180 million because the rest of the money's going to be written off. And it's not part of the actual budget of this film because it's the third iteration of what they're
We know Disney does this. We know Disney does this.
Ryan, if you could share your screen, you talked about this on Daily earlier. We have some anecdotal evidence, and some real evidence from the past that they've lied. And then I can tell you what I've heard.
So obviously this comes out and a lot of people are screaming from the hilltops. Oh, people here say no to Hollywood Reporter, then quoting World of Real. Why is why media literacy is dead. But Apple Karen, this random person on the
media
internet,
literacy, get the fuck out of here. Sorry.
But Apple Karen, this random person on the internet told me it cost over $300 million to make. So that must be correct, right? You all are stupid as fuck. The amount of clowns being in denial in the comment section is fucking hilarious. Imagine putting your trust in an unreliable ass source over an actual news trade. God, some of you all are so goddamn gullible.
These so reliable news trades. Yeah, they're so reliable.
I saw so much of this and it was predictable. And it's the reason Marvel puts these numbers out because they know it gets put out there. People see it. And for a long time, they're going to repeat that that's the budget because people in general, normie, dumb fucks like this sucking retard, right? They're going to assume that Hollywood Reporter is right. But let's look at the reliable news trades. Deadline, Variety, Hollywood Reporter. They couldn't possibly have a history of being completely and totally wrong about their projected or reported budgets when Marvel lies to them and tells them what it is. Not No Way Home. This is Multiverse of Madness. Doctor Strange 2. Remember when that came out? Made almost $1 billion, $950 million of the big opening weekend. And everybody proclaimed, wow, with a $200 million budget, this is a profitable movie for the MCU because everyone said, as is the case with any Marvel studio, Doctor Strange cost a pretty penny. Carried a $200 million production price tag, right? $200 million. Well, that's weird. 2 years later, when Disney's forced to actually reveal and report those tax documents in the UK, those get revealed. Well, we find out it actually cost $415 million.
Shout out to Caroline Reed.
A little bit more.
Shout out to Caroline Reed, who's been uncovering this stuff too.
Now, I will go ahead and give them some benefit of the doubt here and let them know, oh, by the way, they did get a tax credit for that of around 60. So it brings the total budget down to a measly $360 million. Yeah, that's all.
I mean, give or take.
Right? Give or take. But that must be the only case. They've never been wrong about any of this shit before, right? Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania has been one of the worst reviewed Marvel movies to date, holding $213 million domestic box office, blah, blah, blah. The movie had an estimated production budget of $200 million for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. This is from Variety. Again, well, turns out that was a lie. That movie actually went up in the $380 million range. And with that tax credit, came all the way down at $330 million. Man, we got two. That's not really a pattern. It's
hey,
just
can I
two,
tell
right?
the IRS my estimate is off by $130 million?
I know, right?
Or the shareholders.
Or the shareholders, yeah.
But, I mean, that's just two. That can't possibly be a pattern.
No,
what about the Marvel?
Oh, no.
The Marvel's bombs as superhero fatigue deepens. The Marvel Studios sequel, which cost $200 million to make. Well, that's weird. This is Hollywood Reporter.
Yeah.
I've been told by dumb, retarded queers like this that the Hollywood Reporter is a reputable trade, a reputable news source when it comes to Marvel budget reporting. Oh, wait a second. Why the Marvel actually cost Disney $374 million. That was the production budget when it was all said and done. And unfortunately, we can't do these same things for things like Thor Love and Thunder or Black Panther Wakanda Forever because those projects were United States projects.
Yes.
Right? So we'll never see the truth behind those like we can see if they make it in the UK. And we'll never be able to see the truth behind Captain America Brave New World. But there's no fucking way that that's all they spent on this movie. This is probably like Robert said, and like Gary's probably about to say, this is probably what they cost when they decided to scrap the whole movie and start from scratch.
Yes.
Absolutely. And
because then the rest goes into, they can write it off, call it whatever they want. They make up that whatever the company needs to cover it up, they'll use that.
Wow.
So when that report came out yesterday, I got 3 texts, and one of them, they're all basically different variations of LOL. From the people I heard about and we heard about, Robert Downey Jr. Was going to be Doctor Strange months before that was announced.
Dr. Doom.
Dr. Doom, sorry. Dr. Doom. Henry
Cavill's alternate version of Wolverine.
Short arms.
Six months before those leaks came out.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Short arms.
And we'll find out if he's right about another one because of Punisher and Hulk being in the next Spider-Man movie. We'll see if that's right.
Yeah.
But
that's obviously really early in production, though.
It's very I'm not sure if we'll hear about that. I don't know if there's a D23 this year or at a con or whatever, but we should be hearing about it soon. Yeah, I was told that was that's what they paid for the reshoots was $180 million. That's
and that's not even crazy. When we list these things that we've just shown in order, it seems like the average amount they're spending on these movies over the past couple of years is in the $350 million range.
Yeah.
Like that seems to be the average. That seems to be a reasonable number that they would have spent on something like this, especially with the excessive reshoots and rewrites and massive delays and all the things that happen. So that's the thing, that $350 million budget isn't even really that mind-blowing when you consider the real budgets that are being reported 1 or 2 years after the fact.
Well, and
yeah,
look
they,
at
they didn't used to be that way though. Marvel was they were pretty economical about how they made films. It's only recently, I was reading about from a canon perspective, the idea that you're going to have, look, I love Anthony Mackie as Falcon. I thought he was great.
Yep.
But to turn him into Captain America and then have him go up against a Hulk, and if he's not a super soldier, to be a nerdy fanboy, how could you possibly have even written a story where you're going to have a non-super powered or a non-super soldier Captain America take a punch from the Hulk? And if they're saying that that's one of the problems with the movie, that they've had to do reshoots to sort of alleviate that, well, you have a fundamental foundational problem with the story that you're telling. So how did you come up with that story in the first place? Who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah.
Why did this happen?
We know why.
The writing phase.
We know why. Because they needed representation, and that always takes the precedent. Storytelling, everything else involved. When identity politics is the forefront, nothing else matters. Like Chris Evans should be in this movie. I hate Chris Evans as a human being. I think he's a piece of shit. I think he's a fantastic Captain America. If he's in this movie's probably not going to make $1 billion, but it's probably going to be pretty damn close.
Yeah,
it's going to be pretty damn close, though. But it wouldn't have had the reshoots. They wouldn't have had the reshoots if Chris Evans was in it, probably, because they would have had everything figured out from the beginning, because they would have cast the right person telling the right story. So everything else is not going to be a complete and total disaster.
And people loved Anthony Mackie as Falcon.
Yes.
He was great.
And the Falcon's his own character. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with being the Falcon, and giving him hand-me-downs is disrespectful. If you really look at it. Now, all you have to do is look at Marvel's actions. If you don't want to believe any of these numbers or believe what anybody has said, look at Marvel's actions. If Wakanda Forever was such a hit, if Thor: Love and Thunder was such a hit, if all of these things were so damn successful, they wouldn't have gotten Robert Downey Jr. back to play Dr. Doom. They wouldn't be doing this hard reset. They wouldn't have been bringing back the Russo brothers. They would continue doing what they were doing. So it's through their actions we know.
Yeah, it would already be bad enough if these budgets were all that we knew, but we also know that they don't take 100% of those box office receipts either. So if you even go back to 2019's Captain Marvel and you add all the way through the Marvel's release, they're at a $377 million loss. And that's because it eats away at over $600 million in profits they made off of Endgame.
Yeah.
So everything that they've made before really up to that point, back to from 2019, they've lost on all these movies.
And that's
because
just the
of
movies.
These massive budgets.
That's just the movies, Odin, not the merchandising, which they've lost money on. Hey, what are they doing with merchandising right now? Oh, they're making everything look like the 90s. They're making everything they're going retro. Because that's what sells.
Retro. Everything is retro.
That's what sells.
Everything is retro. Everything.
In terms of Disney losses as well, there's all the Disney Plus shows as well. How they work it out, Disney.
Overall, though, they've lost the foundations of what it means to run a business. Like the Variety article about Star Trek, Paramount were really pleased with themselves that they were using sets from other shows. I'm like, why is that amazing to you? They were smug that they'd thought of the idea. If you own a studio making multiple, use shows from like random programs and just redress them if you've already got the stuff. This
and Star
you should be
Trek
running lean.
The Berman era, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise always recycled sets.
Yeah,
and the intermix chamber in the engineering section of the Voyager on Star Trek Voyager was actually built for Star Trek: The Motion Picture in the late 70s, and then they used it in a 90s show because they were making Star Trek in one location. Now they've bifurcated it. Picard was shot here, Strange New Worlds and Discovery, and this was shot in Toronto. So they're all over the place. When if they had kept production, I mean, I know it's cheaper in Toronto, but if they kept it in one place, they might have been able to amortize the costs more.
Yeah, it's hopefully that maybe some regulations will get lifted and they can shoot in LA because they need a shot in the arm right now, big time, considering what's going on down there. But with Marvel, it's through their actions, it's what they've done, and it's admitting failure. Like when you had to go out there and bring out the Russo brothers, and everything's riding on for them. Forget internally, they know. I got to think about what I was told and be careful. But it was dog shit. They reshot it and they go, it's not as much dog shit now, and that's internally. So they're going to come out going, no, this is great. We feel really good about this movie. They knew it was dog shit. And the reason
the same way everyone was about The Flash, right? It's like,
yeah.
So this is the greatest movie we've ever made, guys. We promise.
We promise. And the reason they're pushing this $180 million budget is to bring down, so it makes it look successful because they know damn well how this is going to play out in the theaters. If it makes $500 million, then they can say, hey, we broke even,
Yep.
And it's just about adjusting the numbers, and it's an information game. That's all it is. But they're lying. And they've always been lying. And these trades have always been mouthpieces. They just regurgitate press releases for the most part. Sometimes they'll get editorial once in a while, but not often. Not really that often. That's why it's shocking when we see like a Vulture, even through anonymous sources have, A-list talent agents go, Hollywood doesn't matter as much as it thinks it does. When you're off the record, they're free to say all kinds of crazy. I'm like, what the hell did he just say?
That Vulture article was crazy. Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely nuts.
There's an exec that is talking about, woke was basically dying before even like the election happened. It's been like a long time coming and a lot of shit like that.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Which I feel like we all knew. We all knew that was happening. It was waning. It was falling.
A while.
Yeah, we already knew that.
Well, woke was never alive, to be fair. This is why it was
Great point.
injected in everything that was successful to make it have the illusion that it had success, but it never truly had success. It was an illusion because it was interjected into so many successful things. But eventually all of those successful things started to slowly lose support over the years.
A lot of people just go along with whatever they think is the dominant belief system, which is why now it seems like it's changed. Everybody's flipping. They don't need to be told to flip. They just do it automatically.
Yep.
Go to the Fox article. It's like this article's long, and it's framed like everybody's scared and we're worried about self-centering, and that's absolute bullshit. I would argue that Hollywood is now freer to create than before. They were self-censoring before because of all these restrictions and regulations, which still exist internally at every corporation and within the Oscars. But Hollywood finds failure and to elect Kamala unsettling. But what Ryan talked about this. I did too. But the Vulture article is framed like Hollywood's scared. But if you go through the middle paragraphs, it's gold. It's absolute gold. And that's hearing from actual people in Hollywood. None of them would speak on the record. And they were like, yeah, that was crazy. That time we went through, that was nuts. We better
what was that
change.
about, guys, right?
Woo, yeah.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me the whole time. I was with you guys.
Yeah. So if we scroll down a little bit, and off the political stuff, I'm more concerned about like, there's one guy who's like, they're really going to come after Iger. Hollywood doesn't matter as much as it thinks it. Doesn't matter as much as it thinks it matters. The talent agent said, "You had the biggest stars in the world support Kamala. She couldn't have drawn more powerful advocates, and it didn't move the needle. What does it tell you? It's unsettling because the people and things you hold in high esteem don't drive the culture. As much as I love movies, they aren't the driver anymore," which is sad. It's because they saw movies drove the culture because you weren't trying to make movies that drove the culture. You were trying to make good art, right? Whatever message you're trying to put, Robert was talking through allegory. A lot of people would say Star Trek's always been political. No, it's been morality tales. Okay. I don't think it's a political stance to hate a race of beings or anything like that, or like, I don't know a political part. Well, maybe there's one that's a fringe, but nothing that I've interacted with in my life. I've never run across a guy who goes, I really like that genocide stuff. It's awesome, man.
Well, Gary, as you pointed out, Star Trek never told you what to think.
Yes.
It gave you things to think about, which is a very different thing. Yeah. And this idea that people that are making entertainment have some kind of agenda that they could push on you thinking that they knew better than the audience did was really where everything started to go wrong. I mean, you tell a great story, you allow the audience to come to their own conclusions by telling you, hey, you tell a great story, you can put in whatever you want as long as the story is great. But when the stories start to be compromised because the people telling those stories think they know better than their audience, you lose.
And they lost that ability to make great content, like great, I say content because that's what they call it. Great films, right? Great stories. They lost that ability at the worst possible time for the movie industry. It's when video games are the biggest they've ever been, when online content is the biggest it's ever been. They decided to go, hey, let's just make shit for 10 years almost.
Let's social engineer. Narrative. Let's start. Well, they mention it. They're like, we got to get back our. We have to dictate what's relevant. Yeah, right. Hollywood doesn't dictate. Yeah. Hollywood is like the best stories are reflective of culture, and what Robert just said, leave open-ended questions like Blade Runner, the classic that has no sequels, left the ending wide open so we can debate it till the end of time. Joker, which has no sequel, had an ending that was ambiguous that you could have debated till the end of time. That's what good art does.
The problem that they have is Star Trek pitched the different viewpoints in their world from characters, and it fit those characters because those characters were whole people. Yes. That you knew if you just said a story, you could predict which character would be on one side and it all fit. But the people writing these, they're not even like full people in themselves. They're an identity box. And that's how you end up with Section 31 just being stereotypes. I'm a femme fatale. Well, I'm a big, tough, thick guy. They aren't people. They're just tick boxes.
No, dude, they're describing their casting descriptions. That's all it was. Was cast femme fatale. Okay, just read it back to me. Cool. All right. Scroll down a little bit.
The modern audience doesn't exist. Turns out.
No, you're right. Down. You're correct.
Did I get it right the first time?
You got it right. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think with the agenda that Hollywood's been pushing, right, the biggest issue that I've been seeing is how overt they became in the last 10 years. And not only that, they've pushed it much farther than they'd ever be tempted to before. There used to be somewhat of a balance where there's been a lot of kind of woke progressive stuff in Hollywood for a long time, but there's also been, great traditional, values that would come out of some of the mainstream as well. They seem to have abandoned that completely recently, where, any type of masculinity is toxic, everything like that. And people then have gotten fed up with it. And there's been a lot of pushback. But I think Hollywood has always kind of been a bit more progressive on that side, trying to push things a little bit, but nowhere near as far as they've gone recently.
Yep. The movement away from woke was already in motion before Trump got reelected, a blockbuster producer told Vulture. They continued. We're seeing the departure of executives at the studios that had been hired to promote DEI in film and TV. By the way, this is Vulture reporting this. Vulture, which is owned by Vox Media. Hollywood had swung too far to the left over the past few years, and there was bound to be a reckoning. Yep. and like we tried to warn you. Video after video, year after year, this was going to happen. It was inevitable. Another production executive commented in the report that there isn't a strong desire for rhetorical storytelling in Hollywood. See, that's bullshit, personally, but with some fearing it could hurt creativity. That's what's been happening.
Rhetorical storytelling would be like expanding creativity, because then you don't have to like pick, like, because Hollywood only had one idea it could push.
But they haven't been
push.
They haven't been expanding creativity. They've been restricting it. They have been
rhetorical storytelling would have allowed them to be like, we don't have to put us into the movie, but therefore it can be anything, and you can interpret it the way. Like, look at Starship Troopers. Whether you think they're right or wrong, there are so many different versions that people interpret that movie. That is creativity in itself.
It is. Right, that's the best kind of movie, really. A veteran talent manager and producer said, "What I see internally and with my friends all over the business, whether they're studios or producers or creatives or their agents, it's that right now we're in an acute period of scarcity." Oh, really? And what caused that, by the way? Let's just pause right there. What caused that scarcity? Well, the government response to COVID, being shut down, although Hollywood was allowed to work through that. And then the worst time strikes in history, and then an act of God that you have no control over. And this is why you don't play around with stuff like that, because, like the Palisades fire and other fires are it's another Hollywood interruption. And this one's tragic and it's bad and nobody's happy about it. And it's going to take decades to recover. And a lot of people, a lot of the movers and shakers and rank and file lived there. And they're affected now. This is going to affect casting. This is going to affect scheduling. We have major producers who, sure, have another home to go to, but they still have to now deal with the California bureaucracy on if they're going to build their home or not, or if BlackRock's just going to come up and buy up all the land. Who knows? But that's another major obstacle in them not fully being back. Robert, even the trades, these trustful trades are saying, we have not had a full release schedule in Hollywood since 2019. We have
right.
Wow.
And what's amazing to me about what we saw going through this whole DEI era, I think everybody is interested in seeing new stories from new creators. There's been no effort to stifle anybody from getting into the business. Nobody said, you can't come in. Everybody wants to see new films being made by talented new people. The thing is, though, people aren't getting into the movie business because it's really hard to make independent movies. And when you've made one, you can't get them seen anywhere. So, I think back to the first time I saw Spike Lee's first film, She's Gotta Have It. He wanted to make a movie. He wanted to be a filmmaker. He went and got the money, got it financed through family, friends, through working, and he made a breakthrough movie that when I first saw it, it was about a black woman with multiple boyfriends living in Brooklyn. I'm living in Seattle. I'd never been to Brooklyn at that point in my life. And I thought it was a wonderful film. I'm like, wow, this is something I didn't see every day. And his third movie was Do the Right Thing, which is an incredible breakthrough, great American film from the latter half of the 20th century. No one is stopping anybody. No matter what color you are, no matter what your sexual preference is, no matter what your sexuality, what gender, no one is stopping you from going out and making a movie. And that's why DEI initiatives, I never understood this, because as someone who's worked in the entertainment business, we have more technology to make movies now than we've ever had. You don't have to buy film, which was expensive. You've got 4K cameras in your pocket. Anybody can go out and make, like Sean Baker going out and making Tangerine Dream, making Tangerine. Now he has Nora.
I love Tangerine Dream, though. I love him.
Yeah, I do. Now he goes out and makes a Nora. No one is stopping anybody from making anything.
Soderbergh made Unsane with an iPhone, right?
You're talking about the independent stuff, because the DEI policies are completely structured in only letting certain groups.
Well, yeah, but I would argue that Hollywood has made it clear who they want making films and who they don't. Like Sound of Freedom is a classic example. Most of the time, Hollywood follows every trend until something like Sound of Freedom comes out, and they've widely ignored it completely. And
A fringe right-wing film, which is
Yeah,
about
QAnon adjacent was the
had
expression
bought
they
it.
were using. QAnon
Fox had
adjacent.
bought it, and then they wouldn't allow it to be released.
Yeah.
But
Right.
my point though is that if you're look, Hollywood will exploit anyone who's talented. They don't care who you are. If you've made something they think they can make money on, they'll figure out a way to exploit you.
But it doesn't seem like they've been doing that recently.
I don't know if I
DEI
agree with that though. I think Hollywood, in spite of itself, will give up on money for narratives.
But that's remember that's
to a point.
It's big Hollywood, right?
You're
To a
talking the
point.
studio system, though. I'm
Yeah.
talking about at the indie level. Like, look at the kids who made Talk to Me. They were social media
Yeah.
influencers. They
Yeah.
were making videos for TikTok, and they upped their game. And they made Talk to Me, which is a great little horror film from Australia. Two brothers, the Safdies. They started out. They made Uncut Gems. We don't have people that are stepping up and making independent movies the way we used to. Why? Because it's hard. And everyone would rather make, and I don't blame them, user-generated content. There's incredible creativity happening on TikTok. Incredible creativity. People today are not as interested in movies as they used to be.
Yep.
And Hollywood has never quite figured out, they haven't figured out Gary, they haven't figured out this platform, they haven't figured out why people would, I watch more YouTube now than I watch TV or watch movies.
Same here.
User-generated content, because why? There is more authenticity. People would rather hear they rather hang out with you guys. Thanks for having me here, because I like hanging out too.
Cheers.
Than watching something that feels inauthentic to them, which is half the movies that are coming out from the studios now.
Yeah, agreed. And the reliance on CGI, which takes all of the life out of pretty much any film, generally speaking, the lack of practicality, that's taken a lot of what we perceive as the authenticity, of a lot of these projects too. This just made everything feel lifeless, and it's just like paint by the numbers. There's no like true passion that you can feel coming from a lot of these movies anymore, especially the big budget movies. The big budget movies have zero passion coming out of that, zero authenticity, and they have too much red tape surrounding them.
It's like when we get Multiverse of Madness from Sam fucking Raimi, right?
Which should be good. On paper, that should be a great movie.
Right. And of that 2-hour-long movie, however long it was, there was about 2 or 3 minutes where I was like, that's Sam Raimi right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like the rest of it didn't feel like it at all.
Yep.
No, and you're right, Jeremy. Like, honestly, for me last year, the most interesting stuff I saw was on streaming, which is the devil in Hollywood. But but even with that, you get like The Gentleman. The Gentleman came out almost a year ago. It's a great fucking show.
Great show.
It's got no special effects in it. We're gonna have to wait 2 or 3 years between shows. So like they need to figure that out. Like Taylor Sheridan's figured that out. Aside from the strike, he kind of brings, after the delay of that, his stuff comes out pretty regularly, and they need to crack that one somehow. But there's so much out there, and it's just been watered down. And you're also competing against yourself. There's so many variables, Robert. Hollywood's competing against itself. You don't have to go to Blockbuster to get a movie. You can just go, and you know what I'm doing? I have all these fucking movies at my disposal, and I'm watching Geeks and Gamers Daily in my home theater. That's what, because it's more entertaining, So like that's.
Yeah, people's standards have really gone down.
They've gone down. What can I say? I mean, some people call you the voice of reason, and that's scary enough.
Yes,
scary enough. But
I think it's right.
Yeah, like
Night Agent season 2, I think released today on Netflix. I'm gonna be watching that.
Yep. Melissa was watching it a little bit.
The third season of Reacher's coming.
Yes.
Yeah, in February. Yep.
1923 is coming.
I'm about halfway through Persuader, which is the book that season is based on.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the ones I've read about half of the Lead Child Jack Reacher books. That's one of the ones I hadn't read yet. So
how is it?
I'm looking forward to see it on screen.
How is it so far?
It's solid. It is a very stereotypical Reacher book, like kind of as opposed to season 2, which was adapted from a book, which is very strange. He doesn't usually have these big team ups with people he knows from his past. It's very weird. That's an outlier. Usually it's just him finds himself in a weird situation. Either he witnesses something that he feels he needs to step in on, or he gets caught up in something with some government agency that needs help, but they don't really want to bring him in really, and he doesn't really want to come in really. It's one of those stories again.
By the way, American Primeval, somebody in the chat brought that up.
I've heard that's good.
It's incredible.
I have heard that's good too.
It's so brutal. Peter Berg did it.
Yeah, I heard it's good.
And it's based on a real, well, it's fictionalized, but it's based on a real, I didn't know about the Utah Wars. Had no idea what was going on. That's a whole period of American history I was totally knew nothing about. Man, is it brutal, and man, was it entertaining. It's really good.
I'm about to check that one out. I have heard good stuff about it. And I like Peter Berg too. Peter
really
Berg
good.
typically is really good stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good comedy and Mythic Quest if you've never seen it before. That season, next season's coming out next week.
1923 season 2 comes out next February, end of February.
End of February.
Yeah, so I'm happy about that.
Things are going to start getting released because this has been this is like the quietest January since COVID. I mean, the quietest month for like nothing has come out. But we are going to
Flight Risk came out this weekend.
Yes, it
right?
did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm going to try to see it this weekend. I wasn't able to get to it yesterday or today.
Mel Gibson
You made us watch
Mel.
fucking Star Trek.
There's a horror movie coming out called Companion. Now, I haven't seen it, but I read the script. The script was really good. And, it stars Dennis Quaid's and Meg Ryan's son, who's in The Boys,
Jack.
who is also in Jack Quaid, who is also in Star Trek Lower Decks. But the script was really good. The trailer looked good. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a low-budget horror film, but
has been interesting as well. Like, they literally posted a banana with not a companion on it. And, like, all that stuff was like, this is the companion. People like posting washing machines, not a companion.
It's pretty good. The script's pretty good. And there's a couple of Stephen King adaptations, like The Long Walk was finally adapted. The Running Man and The Long Walk were both Bachman books, and they're both coming out this year. And so is Mike Flanagan, who I've loved his horror stuff, his Life of Chuck, which is another King adaptation that was at Toronto, which I can't wait to see, is also coming out. So there's some good stuff I'm interested in seeing that's pretty mainstream or horror, but I think there's good stuff coming.
Oh yeah, One Piece season 2. Hopefully it's good.
Cobra Kai is coming
in
in
February.
Borderlands season 3.
Alice in Borderlands.
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things. Yeah.
Is that this year or next year?
No,
this year.
It's this year. And and every episode is
that entire fucking cast is gonna be older than Gary.
I know.
Holy shit!
That's
What's
fucking
the
old.
time period? They're gonna be in the 90s.
Like, it's gonna
That's
be
fucking
bad.
old. No, like every episode is supposed to be almost 2 hours
like
long.
a feature film.
Yeah,
it's like a movie.
It's like an hour and 45 minutes long.
Yeah.
Like
Hopefully
the
don't
last
drop
couple
the
episodes.
And they
of
spent a
season
year
4.
straight shooting it. And hopefully there's a big time jump.
I don't. Here's the thing. Can there be a big time?
No,
jump with
because
how
they ended
left
it.
off?
They can't. And
Right.
It would
And
be
so, like,
crazy. We
do
put a
think
force
that
field over the town, and we kept it in
Basically, yeah.
stasis for 5 years.
I do think when they come out, I feel like we as the viewers have a little bit of understanding and like forgiveness almost about characters looking older because we realize they fucking are older. Like that's like kind of impossible to escape. But I feel like in the aftermath, 3 years from now, somebody gets into it and they watch it, that's going to be very off-putting.
Yes.
Whereas like people that are in the moment following it when it comes out, I don't really think we'll consider it that big of a deal.
I agree.
If you go back and watch season 1, it's shocking. It's drastic.
Yeah, it's almost like
even
watching
from season 1 to season 3. They look so much fucking
like little
older.
for people in the future watching it. It's going to be like watching El Camino and seeing Fat Damon in it. Like that was weird, man. That dude
Jesse went on a binge, man.
He really did. And didn't he lose all that weight? Yeah, I think he lost all of it since then, if I'm not mistaken. So it's very jarring, though.
So on the subject of the culture war, which many have said didn't exist, we got an article this is sourced from the LA Times. How Hollywood lost the culture war. I did a video on this about 2 months ago, but let's hear what they have to say. The most perceptive joke to air on American television in the last 10 years goes something like this. Attorney Diane Lockhart, liberal lioness of the good fight, awakens one morning to find that Hillary Clinton, not Donald Trump, has won the 2016 election. Struggling to assimilate the joyous news, Diane describes the Trump years to a colleague at her black-owned Chicago law firm as one that would be a bad dream. He kept calling Nazis very fine people. Provable lie.
Yeah.
And he did a Senate campaign for a child molester who's been protecting the child molesters. Just pointing it out. Yep.
Who built the cages, Joe? Who built them?
And he put children in cages. And anti-Semitism, where's that coming from right now? Just, I mean, a lot of places. And racism were on the rise. Wait, partner Liz Reddick interrupts. Where were the Obamas during all this?
Getting divorced.
Yeah.
We need to push back on this shit, okay? Like the idea that Obama is having an affair with Jennifer Aniston, if anything, that story is a plant because it's very
That's
obvious
what I
that
said
Obama would be
yesterday.
getting fucked in the ass by a dude.
That's
Like,
what I
there's
said.
No way that's real.
I said the most realistic scenario here is that Jennifer Aniston has been paid off to be part of this story, so that they can divert from the truth that Obama has found his love of his life, which is a man, and and we all know. Never mind, I'm not going to.
But like,
Let's never Cobra Cast. Oh, knows what happened to the chef? What happened to the chef, Michelle? What happened to the chef? What did you do to the chef? All right,
I'm gonna tell you. He already
He found Mr. Winky.
It was a great love story. Obama found someone who would fuck him in the ass and also cook him breakfast in the morning. He was very happy about
Everybody
that.
wants that.
Michelle found out.
Every
Used his
Obama.
big hands, choked him to death.
You guys don't believe that Barack and Jennifer Aniston can fall in love. Jennifer would be like, oh, Barack.
okay.
I
mean, there was a time she was hot enough to turn a gay dude straight. I mean, Diane pauses, searching for her memory for a moment, then matter-of-factly delivers an indictment for the ages. They had an overall deal at Netflix. Oh, okay.
That's
Premiering,
the greatest joke of the year. Like,
yeah.
Is this like a fantasy that this person?
This is why comedy is dead.
Are they illustrating why they lost the culture war?
I'm not sure where they're going. I mean,
did you not read this beforehand?
No, actually, I didn't. Why would I do that?
We're going through it together.
We're going through it
It's a journey.
together. Are you thinking this, Ryan? Do you think I read through articles before we go on Friday Night Tights? I like the visceral reaction.
Authenticity, man.
Especially when you're referring to a show that only a certain side of the aisle is even going to sit through. The Good Fight. I mean, come on.
Never heard of this ever.
It was on CBS All Ass, right? And
That'll be why.
It was, what was it? It's a spinoff, right? From another show.
Good Wife?
The Good Wife. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Premiering in April 2020, the gang deals with alternative reality, finds Robert and whoever gives a, I don't give a shit, at its most laceratingly funny. Man, these big words are getting me right now. And the deepest cuts are reserved.
Go back and take a run up at it.
And the deep, that wouldn't help. If I had read this before, I would have forgotten it. Okay, that's like when I do a video, Disparu. I don't have all my tabs
this
open.
is the guy planning out all of our manipulation behind the scenes. Right. Doesn't even read a fucking article before he shares it in front of 15,000 people, but he's planning all this other stuff out behind the scenes.
Dude,
I don't read the articles. In
Yeah,
advance
you
either
don't
when I
need,
make a
nobody,
video.
no streamer does. Who the hell does that?
Ryan's the only one.
I read them before a video multiple times so I can remember. Like Disparu can read an article once and remember a quote and what paragraph it's in. I have to like number the paragraphs and like, yeah, it's a whole
But
deal.
I can remember that for about an hour that I filmed the video in, immediately deleted the moment I stopped recording.
Diane soon discovers #MeToo never happened. Well, don't we all wish that never happened? Because that was just a giant fraud and power move. Watching as Harvey Weinstein protected by his checkbook and a courtier of "Don't Rock the Boat" political operatives received an award from a group called Women Unite for Change. Well, there's still people getting those rewards to this awards for this. To this very day. As any student of the Kings will know, the point is not to conjure up some Pizzagate style conspiracy. What's going on in the UK right now, man?
No, that's yours.
Oh, I know.
Well, this
I
one
know.
is, but
believe me, our political elite have their own stuff going on too. Let's not kid ourselves about that shit. But Pizzagate. Where was I? The gangs deal with an alternative reality skewers the failure. A major American political party and its allies in the world's foremost. Thank you. Cultural economy.
I was trying to figure out where you jumped back in.
I'd say you skipped some stuff. But
yeah, you skipped. I was like, where is he? Where is he?
You kind of skipped. That was like the main point.
Go back up then. If I skipped
it was trying to say that like they were not trying to say that was what they thought the reality of the world was, but about what the show's point is.
Okay, that's way better.
Focuses on the moral and mental gymnastics of center-left elites.
Yes.
Center left, right. Center left.
Oh God. Okay, the good fight, like its predecessor, the Good Wife, focuses on the moral and mental gymnastics of the center left elites. Wow, you need to get out of LA, or you need to go outside of major cities more, out of urban areas. You need to, white glove attorneys, influential producers, tech entrepreneurs, corporate consultants, all which were behind Hollywood, because it takes the right's penchant for selfishness, corruption, vanity, and vacuousness as
projection.
What?
Always projection.
Yeah.
It's the iron law of projection.
Rather, the gang deals with an alternative reality, skewers the failure of a major American political party and its allies in the world's foremost cultural economy to conceive an appealing vision of progressive America, much less bring it to fruition. Even in Diane's fantasy, Democrat ambitions top out at putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. After an election in which countless of celebrity endorsement speeches, concerts and fundraisers, coconut memes, camo hats, fan cams, late night TV interviews, daytime talk show spots, and Saturday Night Live sketches, Lev Kamala and running mate Tampon Tim, no closer to victory than their counterparts, Clinton and Senator Tim Kaine. 8 years ago, the good fight slings and arrows and seems right on target. Does it though? Does it? I think a little more. I think a little more introspection is in order. Let's see what happens. Hollywood, the de facto public relations arm of the Democratic Party, agree with that, has come to reflect and reinforce its that's the problem. By the way, do I need to point that out? That's the problem. That you've become the de facto public relations arm of the Democratic Party. Maybe that's why you're making less money. Just want to point that out. Has come to reflect and reinforce.
I think that's what they're saying here.
Yeah. Its political partners' worst instincts, ceding the initiative for understanding and delivering what Americans want in order to chase the.
Can we just on that point? It literally says
a word I couldn't.
The political,
Thank you for stopping
the Republicans. The political partner's worst instinct is understanding and delivering what Americans want. They actually think that is the worst part of their enemies, that they give the public what they want.
No. So they're saying that they're not giving the public, they don't understand, and they're not delivering what the public want in order to chase this chimera, which Gary didn't finish. That's what they're saying. They're saying that that Hollywood is reflecting the Democratic Party's worst instincts, which are seeding the narrative for understanding and delivering what Americans want in order to give them this.
Oh, yeah, I misinterpreted political partner by meaning the other side.
So once we get to, I got to say it like Alex Jones, the chimera came out of the stable. Focus group approved midpoint in the culture. What's left presents an impoverished picture, not only of the progressive future, but of Hollywood's own. The entertainment industry equivalent of America is already great. The failure of imagination reminds me, in fact, of another joke. Oh God, do we have to go through from the whole?
The first
is your fucking.
Where was the punchline of the first one?
You can't even dream a whole dream, can you? Okay, can I just get to the joke and not get to the holdovers?
I thought, was that the joke?
I don't
genuinely.
Was
confused.
it a joke or an observation? I don't know.
I think it's.
By the way, it mentioned The Holdovers, which was a phenomenal movie from last year. Just want to say.
Going high when Barack and Michelle,
Hollywood,
soon to be divorced. I hope those kids work it out.
Is that real? Is that actually happening?
I think so.
Hey, once you go Jennifer, you don't go back.
She didn't.
Unless
Also,
you're
Kamala and
Ben
Doug are
Affleck.
getting divorced too.
Well, not well. They were seen in a grocery store together recently, being regular folks. But yeah, Michelle did not show up to the inauguration or Jimmy Carter's funeral. So scheduling conflicts. Yeah, that's what my first wife said too when we stopped hanging out. It was a scheduling conflict. Founded their production company Higher Ground in 2018. The notion of post-presidential portfolio built around culture making seemed both a canny innovation and a comfortable fit. Although high-profile talent, powerful executives, and well-connected agents had long been a vital to the Democratic fundraising efforts, the pact between Netflix and the Obamas formalized the relationship in a new way. And the former president and the first lady gifted orators as capable of cheesing whatever.
Orators.
So capable of cheesing with the Muppets and delivering a keynote at the DNC were ideal impressions. Other dignitaries with a liberal bent soon followed suit, including Hillary and Chelsea Clinton, Hidden Light, and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Archwell, all promising in one way or another to inspire viewers through storytelling.
Promising? Really? Is that what they thought about that crap that they were planning to do?
Meghan, are they talking about like Meghan Merkel? What's her fuck? Harry and
Maybe?
Meghan? Yeah.
Meghan Markle.
Yeah. Merkel, whatever.
Meghan Markle has that new thing out on Netflix. How well is that going?
Well, hold on.
Netflix?
She
can make them
delayed it out
promises.
of respect for the LA wildfire.
Oh, sure.
That she showed up to as a disaster tourist. What a...
She came over here and said the royal family needed to update for her. And everyone just went, no.
Yeah.
That was the greatest moment.
And she's like, well, I'll leave then and take your prince.
Yeah, I went, bye.
What exactly we were being inspired to do besides fire up Netflix or Apple TV remained unstated. And early red flag that this new kind of Hollywood power player could not be counted on to supply studios with an appetite for risk. Perhaps inevitably the pointedly ideological projects to come out of these partnerships, such as American Factory, Crip Camp, and Zerwoski versus Texas, were accompanied...
Have you heard of any of them?
What the fuck are these things? I've never heard.
No.
Crip Camp? Is that a camp?
That could be a
with
lot of
cripples?
things. That could be about crippled people. Or it
No,
could also
no.
be about Crips.
It's a camp to train Crips. The Crips.
Oh, like, okay.
Robert, have you heard of any of those? Did you
No, but I would watch Crip Camp.
Sounds interesting.
I would.
Sounds like a good time.
We're accompanied by...
I would love to see a bunch of people in fucking wheelchairs and shit doing an obstacle course. That'd be great.
That'd be sick. There's like
Yeah,
ramps
I
everywhere.
thought Crip Camp is like, the Crips and the Bloods. There'd be
Yeah, that's what I was
blood
thinking.
too.
That'd be awesome.
No,
Yeah.
the Crips
I
are
like
also
my idea
cripples.
way better. I've seen enough real life and fucking and other shows about like gang violence shit. Show me cripples trying to do an obstacle course.
That's
what I
Squid
want.
Game 3.
Yeah, it's called Love on the Spectrum.
Oh no.
We
24
already have
episodes,
Love on the
hour long.
Spectrum. We already
Yeah.
have Downs for Love or whatever.
I want to race up
whatever these,
up a
dating shows
stairway
are.
with wheelchairs. There we go.
We love y'all in the wheelchair community out there. We with you.
Wheelchair community.
Shout out to Alex.
Hey,
Shout out
you
to
and the
Alex.
Daleks have a lot in common.
Yeah.
Fastidiously, what
Just
is it?
learn to fly.
Accompanied by forgettable, soft-focused celebrity interviews, gutsy, fastidiously self-protective biographies, Harry and Meghan. Oh, you should see Polo. Woo! Fucking Piers asked me and Drinker to watch that. That was bad. And scripted projects with only the most tenuous connection to their producers' public personas. As a friend said to me recently about Higher Ground's Bodkin, I have heard of none of the shit. What do murder mysteries have to do with the Obamas? Well,
Obviously, well, hold on.
Interesting question you
hold
got
up.
there.
Wait a minute.
I thought this was a matter of record.
And we're really just all waiting for the spinoff from the Clintons, right?
Alongside flattering documentary portraits of such figures as Nancy Pelosi, Stacey Abrams, and Adam Kinzinger, or furious late night segments from John Oliver, Seth Meyers, and more. The films and TV series created by these production packs slipped mostly unnoticed into the modern content mill as ephemeral, thank you, and at times as cringeworthy as Texas from Hillary, Joby-Wan Kenobi. Joby-Wan
Hang on,
Kenobi.
are those real things?
Joby-Wan Kenobi? Oh, did she say that?
No. Mark Hamill said that.
Oh, Mark Hamill said it. Okay.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, I'm gonna miss this lady.
You're
He
the
was
only
very
one.
clearly drunk.
Who? Mark Hamill?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So was
It was that or Obi-Wan can blow me.
There you go. Or tote bags emblazoned with notorious RBG.
Oh, God.
I will never
Yeah,
forget.
Oh,
it.
that was so cringy.
Do you guys remember when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died and we were live?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Unlike her.
Everyone simped for her.
You're telling me for the first time. Wait, RBG's dead?
How could I forget? How could I forget?
The whole time. The whole time.
So basically, it was like breaking news. Someone's like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died. It was just like kind of
Oh, wow.
silence. And I just said, again?
Okay. So, but as as in the electoral realm, when they go low, we go high. Failed to when?
That was their quote. That was their quote.
I thought one of their quotes was also when they go low, we kick 'em.
we go high.
That's Michelle.
Okay. Failed to meet a moment of profound frustration with, indeed, rage at American institutions and the elites within them. Joining the frictionless symbolism of franchise tent poles with the defense crouch of triangulation, celebrity political culture is in the post-Obama years often appeared to prize the performance of progress bona fides over the achievement of actual policy outcomes.
The fuck are we reading?
I don't know. Okay.
Word salad here.
Next time we need to ask it to ask like an AI to simple this down a little bit.
I was wondering when it was getting to the
We just need
Hollywood
to
part.
take a look at the fucking article before we read
You should
it.
put it in and be like, could you please read this to me
Look on
as
the right.
simple
Look
Jack
how far down the
would,
article we
How,
are.
yeah, how,
Not far at all. Look at this.
I'm waiting for the Hollywood to show up. That's what I'm waiting for.
Gotta go through this preamble.
That's a long fucking. Okay, man, this is why people watch YouTube videos, LA Times, because we get right into it. Woke Hollywood just took a shit. Let's go. I mean, that's it. This fucking basically. They're kind of get introspective and they are looking inward and that was a very long-winded way of saying the general public looks at us as a bunch of elitist assholes. That's pretty much it.
Here we go. It said Hollywood for the first time.
Good God. In roughly the same period, Hollywood studios scrambled to build, program, and market streaming platforms that could compete with Netflix. So we're going to blame Netflix for this, destroying a lucrative business model in the process, only to discover that the millennial and Gen Z viewers have begun to abandon traditional movies and TV shows, which really started happening long before. It's got nothing to do with Netflix. It's got everything to do with YouTube and TikTok and everything else and Instagram in favor for, and well, I missed the biggest one, video games. Video games destroyed comic books, beat the shit out of comic books, it beat the shit out of publishing. It's beating everything combined. Everything combined loses to video games. Comic books couldn't adapt, publishing couldn't adapt, music couldn't adapt. So that's what's captured the youth. Twitch streams, YouTube tutorials, and short vertical videos on platforms like Instagram and TikTok. With both sides of the alliance caught flat-footed by changes in where and how Americans consume information, it's little wonder that the combined reach of Hollywood and the Democratic Party has not been an ace in the hole with voters. Even those red district undecideds who would have enjoyed hearing Julia Roberts and George Clooney discuss the secret ballot.
Who are those people?
Who are those people? May not have received the message. For the very people such spots were designed to target were the least likely to be tuned into them. And the presumably much larger contingent concerned about Gaza, inflation, climate change. Don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on it. And had the housing crisis, well, there is one in LA right now, found not to no holds barred case for the Democratic platform, but a tone. You still got the hiccups, Ryan?
Who's hip? Who's
Yes,
I
You've had him since the
drink some water.
You've had him since
Hold your
daily.
breath.
You've had him since daily.
I've had them since last night. I like had a hard time falling asleep last night. I've had them for almost 24 hours straight.
You're about to have a heart attack.
Are you Looney Tunes drunk right now?
I'm not drunk. No, I probably am about to go into heart failure. I don't.
Oh no.
Well, keep your camera on for that.
Yeah. Can you wait until Monday for daily to do that? That'd be better.
Yep.
Maybe I'll do my best.
So, okay, the Democratic platform, but a tone poem. Go up a little bit or down a little bit. Sorry. Found a no holds bar case for the Democratic platform, but a tone poem about the White House from the cast of The West Wing, or Harrison Ford repeating this the losing slogan from 2016. This is a problem, of course, with the development deal as political act, inspiration, a mission statement, celebrity, and selling point. Horrifying though it may be, Republicans and their media allies this is supposed to be the balanced LA Times, by the way, drive the political agenda through culture, unafraid to stoke emotions, gin up controversy to achieve their desired ends. Stop right there. We don't even need to go any further. No, they just started doing what you were doing the whole fucking time. You don't think precedents aren't set? They just the Republicans finally figured out that pop culture matters. They finally, and not all of them, just a few figured out. And they also started allying with people who weren't Republicans, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. You started getting a team together because things had gotten so fucking crazy, that that culturally, you broke your system, but we're broke culturally. So this culture war was inflamed and gaslit by you, Hollywood, and the system that you were all in league with. And now some of those, in my last video, somebody asked like, well, who's bending the knee? Well, the people who pay for everything are bending the knee. They went to Mar-a-Lago and bent the knee. Zuckerberg, whether you believe him or not, doesn't matter. They did the symbolic thing to bend the knee. Bob Iger bending the knee. That's fucking crazy. Mark Zuckerberg. You had Bezos. All this stuff is happening because it's a loser, and they don't want to be part of being and this thing, as Jeremy said earlier, never worked. It's been bullshit the whole fucking time. Never made any fucking money. Cost a lot. It cost you an industry. It's cost you intellectual properties. It's cost you merchandising. It's cost you a lot. It's not like you didn't give it a try, Hollywood. You gave it the good old college try for a long time, and it just failed. It just fucking failed. So now lick your wounds, and a lot of this stuff isn't going to change. It's going to rename, go somewhere else, and we'll see what's happening. Because, again, to go back to a video Disparu did a week and a half ago, there's just a recent seminar where they're talking about social engineering, like straight up, which is beyond DEI. It's social engineering, when Hollywood shouldn't be a mouthpiece for any fucking party, and they should just be making entertainment.
What they're gonna have to face is like the reason why people like stories is because we've been doing this since the fire was invented, and we sat around telling stories, because it's a way of teaching people how to survive in situations without them going through the dangerous situation and dying. But at an evolutionary advantage. And now, like, morality isn't fixed, it can change, and they have to focus on, if they've only hired one side, the only people who might be able to tell good stories might be the people they despise. And so they might just have to, like, if they're not willing to work with the people from the other side who still have the morality that the audience wants, that can tell the stories that resonate with people rather than trying to change them, I don't think they can fix it at all.
Well, and it's really hard when you've vilified one side so much. Now you have to work with literal Nazis. And that's the problem. That's the problem with going with that kind of rhetoric for so long. And then, oh yeah, we still need your money. I got news for you. Hollywood and a lot of other places, you've pissed some people off permanently, and they're never coming back. I don't think that's breaking any news. You've pissed, and we could just break this down to Star Trek. You've pissed off the majority of the Star Trek fandom. and they're never fucking coming. And a lot of them are never fucking coming back, no matter what you do.
Especially when there's options out there.
Yep.
You know, so it's just that's how it goes.
So as Garrett said, worst timing possible. They've had these 3 major hits, you know, amongst other skirmishes within Hollywood. They've had this big paradigm shift with streaming, and now they're now instead of being Hollywood was always ahead of the game, now they're behind. They're way behind. That just like every streaming service was behind Netflix. You know, Robert, Disney Plus was in product. When I started my channel, I had a friend who was working on Disney Plus, working on the building of Disney Plus. So it had been, they had already put billions into it, and they spent years poaching Netflix people, trying to work on that. And all the other studios did the same, but they were still way behind when it came to streaming.
Well, I think they're still way behind.
Yep.
I mean, one of the things about Disney Plus is they thought the thinking that an IP can just, like, if you slap something on it, people are going to buy it. So they suddenly are asking both Marvel and Star Wars to be the cornerstones of their streaming service, not thinking that, hey, you still have to make a quality product. You still have to make shows that are great so people watch them. People are not just going to watch something because it's Star Wars or watch something because it's Marvel. It still has to be good. The Acolyte showed what happened if you make a Star Wars project or just give a Star Wars project to anybody.
Well, I mean, Section 31 has demonstrated that again. Like this, the only thing that Star Trek is the label on it. Nothing else felt like Star Trek in this entire show.
No, and what's amazing is they let it get made on every level.
Yes, it's a failure.
It failed. Like, what has that done to the brand moving forward? And the real question is, why would someone at the top allow a project like that to get made? We can't see Batgirl, but they released Section 31 to the public. I mean, it was all contractual. It's all money. I mean, clearly look, I've been railing against modern Star Trek since 2009, and everyone's tired of me hearing it, or tired of hearing it from me. But when you look at something like Section 31, that is so disdainful of the audience itself. The question should be asked, why are people like that allowed anywhere near a set? Why is anyone giving those people any money at all to make things when they clearly don't know how to make something? And yet we still have to endure it.
Yep.
You know, I think that in, this 2018 era when a lot of this stuff was still doing well, I think they did convince themselves they could slap this brand on something, artificial hype. A lot of people got caught up, and a lot of people wanted to be fans of it because it was popular at the time. And that's why you have things like Captain Marvel hitting $1 billion. Even though no one really cared about the character, they slapped it in between the 2 most important superhero movies of all time, and it made $1 billion, right? Force Awakens. I know a lot of people had different opinions, maybe at the time, maybe it's changed since the other ones came out, but I thought Force Awakens was a joke. I thought it was a shell of a movie. I thought it was hollow. I thought it was I thought there was nothing there. They didn't explain anything in this world. I thought it was bullshit, but it made $2 billion because they got people hyped about Star Wars and things like that. So I think they did trick themselves into thinking they could do that because they did it for a while, putting out dog shit. With it. It's still making billions of dollars, but it took a little while for people to catch on. And now that they've invested so much into that, they're so far down that path and the audience has completely gone away.
Well, J.J. Abrams hasn't directed a movie in 6 years.
No, director jail. He's in director jail.
And his Star Wars movie made $1 billion, the last one.
Yeah. Yeah. God, they would love the box office total of Rise of Skywalker. They would love for Mandalorian.
They would kill for that. They would kill for that. Yeah. Yeah.
But even that's creatively bankrupt.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, making giving us a TV show as in place of a real Star Wars movie.
And it's a Boba Fett knockoff and a Yoda knockoff. I mean,
and quite literally, that is just as we said kind of initially when we started hearing about this, because Mandalorian season 4 had already been written basically. And we got told, oh, Mando season 4 is no longer happening. And a lot of people are like, I bet they just fucking just jammed this all up, crumpled it up into a movie script. That's what they did. That's what Mando and Grogu is. And I think part of it is because they realize, fuck, we're not making any money by putting this out on the streaming service. We might as well just fucking release it in the theaters anyway, recoup some of this money, see what we can do. And then we find out the plot point behind it is a repeated plot point from Clone Wars, the TV show. So,
I mean, if there's any indication that IPs have hit the bottom of the barrel, I think The Mandalorian and Grogu is the greatest example of that. I mean, Star Wars was moved to TV, and now they're moving TV Star Wars to the movie screen. I'd say that's an epic fail. The last time they tried to do that was the Clone Wars movie they released.
Well, they just have we just got a new writer for the Daisy Ridley movie. The fourth writer now has joined
while we were live.
Yeah,
It did?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. You guys can talk about that. I got to bounce. CobraCast tonight. I got shit going on. Talk to you later. Robert, always good to see you.
Always good to see you too.
Everybody else can go fuck yourself. Except for you,
Fuck
Shad.
you.
You're cool sometimes. Bye.
What
the fuck?
Appreciate you, man.
Why Shad? Why? That's
wow.
That came out of
Because
nowhere.
they both love Twilight. That's what it is.
That's all right. Oh, so who's the
'Cause we have
writer,
the-
Ryan?
We're the correct.
Did you read, speaking of Twilight, that Robert Pattinson said that people are still giving him a hard time for Twilight, and he's like, no one knows he's been in anything, or that he has a new Bong Joon-ho movie coming out, and he said, I was Batman. And people just don't know.
It was like at an airport thing.
Yeah.
He's actually quite a good actor. So I mean,
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Fantastic actor.
Mickey
And
17 looks good too.
Yeah.
it looks interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Like I don't know. I can't say I'm like hyped or, but it looks different and it looks interesting,
Yeah.
which is
I'm going
not-
to see it
not
because of that.
usual for a big movie
But
release.
it like Mark Ruffalo's in it, and if Mark Ruffalo had shut the fuck up, it wouldn't. But it deters me now. He's such a fucking idiot. It's like, oh, he's in it. God damn it.
Yeah.
By the way, did you see the Star Wars Daily tweet when they said breaking President Trump has issued an executive order requiring that Rey from the sequel trilogy will be acknowledged as Palpatine because she was born that way and cannot change to be a Skywalker?
Yeah.
Pretty
Yes, it's true.
I said decanonize all
Star
of
Wars film starring Daisy Ridley lands Born Ultimatum writer George Nolfi.
Oh, he's a good writer.
Okay.
He's also a pretty good director.
12? Did you do Ocean's 12?
Maybe.
He might have.
Ocean's 12 sucked. Ocean's 11
I
and
don't-
13.
I did not
are
love
good.
right. It was all right.
Yes.
No, it's not all right.
It's
gotta
all right if you
it's gotta
watch
be
all
in
three of them.
Vegas. It's got to be in Vegas or it doesn't work. Period.
Yeah, he did write Ocean's 12, but he did the Adjustment
See.
Bureau, and I like it.
The Adjustment Bureau. Okay, off the soups here. Wow, fourth writer. I'm looking forward to the fifth and sixth in the coming months.
It's a good sign when they have a bunch of writers because then it means more ideas, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's how it works.
They could form a writer's room with all the writers they've hired now. Emerald.
To me, I was just gonna say, like, one of the signs for me that shows like Disney Star Wars have nothing left is they're making a Rey movie. It's just like,
yes,
it's gone through everything.
Absolutely nobody wants that. I mean, you could. I think your sure bet right now would just make a Darth Vader movie where he's fucking hunting Jedi for a little while, but they'd fuck that up too. So
Disney is so bankrupt. I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking at gaming and going, "We need a Star Wars rival." Like that would just copy everything that works.
Sure, that's innovation. Emerald Coast Archer has gifted 10 Nerdrotic memberships for Finny. Thank you very much. And once again, donates $50 more. Thank you. And says, "Hey Gary, longtime listener, first time super chatter." All right.
He's a good dude. He's a good dude.
Cheers. I want to thank you, the panel, Nerdrotics, and everyone in the fellowship for helping me stay sane over the years. It's reciprocal. Thank you. Thank you. Man, I'd have gone insane a lot. Well, more insane. What? $50 more. I also wanted to shamelessly plug my Patreon. I'm writing a superhero trilogy. I recently had the first 10 chapters of the trilogy put on YouTube as an AI read audiobook. It's on Hogfell's channel. Hogfell's. Did I say that right? Channel Epoch, yes. Dawn of Heroes. Epoch, Dawn of Heroes. All hail the Iron Age. Hail the Iron Age. There you go. Mike Soros for $100. Thank you. Get Nick Mullen on FNT. All right. That is a demand. X-Ray Girl has noted it down. The Slayer named Buffy for $49.99. Book series recommendation. Commonwealth Saga by Peter Hamilton, 2 books, also great on Audible. Sci-fi alien invasion from space, hot chicks, heroic men, alien abduction, and examination from alien POV. What kind of an examination? Garrett wants to know because he's worried.
I want to know. I don't want
Is
to
it
know.
the probe? One character I swear inspired by Trump. There you go. Is it? Well, I'm sure there's lots of characters inspired by Trump in media. Yeah, he's bald. That's why he left. Notice the sideburns. The sideburns is the giveaway.
Yeah.
He's bald. He's like Dr. Evil. I was watching Austin Powers in 4K. I watched the 4K version.
So good. So good.
I just saw that movie, but there's scenes in there I do not remember. I was like, am I just getting crazy old? Did they just put a European cut or something in there?
Like what
You were
scene?
probably on a lot of drugs when you watched it.
No, I was sober when but I'm just old now. It was the scene after the henchman gets rolled over, and then they go to his house, and the wife answers the phone and tells the stepson. Do you remember that?
That's in there. Yeah, I remember it. That was it.
Okay,
Is that not in the original cut?
Maybe I just completely forgot that. But I just watched it with Mahler like a year ago, so maybe there's a couple other scenes in there. I'm like, I don't remember that, but maybe it's all starting to go, and pretty soon I'll be able to see Star Wars for the first time again.
It's what I like about Demolition Man when Americans watch it and like, what do you mean Burger King won the war?
Oh, right, yeah. It's the crib course. It's the crib camp.
The transfer. Oh, that's very good. The transfer is pretty good. Robert, I'm starting to think 4K is a big fucking scam. Okay. Like
if they don't do the right thing, they need to go back to the original film stock. And if they don't have that, then you can't 4K it. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, if you look at older films like Citizen Kane came out in 4K, Seven Samurai, especially if you get the BFI version, incredible. I mean, remember, 4K is essentially 4 times as good as HD, and HD is 6 times as good as standard definition. But like quarter scale or 1/4 black says, yeah, when you're going back, I mean, it's just more pixels, it's more resolution. So 4K is basically the human eye sees it about 4K, a little bit better, but it really depends. Now, a lot of there are 2 things. People are complaining about the Kill Bill movies.
Yes.
And now here's the thing, and this is the same is true of Amelie. Amelie is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Great movie.
At the time when they did Kill Bill, they were doing things. They were finishing digitally. They were shooting on film and finishing digitally.
Yep.
HD 4K didn't exist then. Only 2K did. They would finish at 2K. So what happens is they scan all your negative. They color grade the film, and that's how the movie exists. In order to put the Kill Bill films in true 4K, they would have to go back and rescan the negative from scratch, and then recolor time the film from scratch. Tarantino just doesn't want to do that. That's incredibly laborious. It costs a lot of money, and he likes the film the way they are. He likes both of those movies the way they are, and so they do an upscale. I think those movies would they look better if they were true 4K scans? Yes, but I think those discs look pretty damn good, and Jackie Brown looks amazing because it is a full 4K scan off the original camera negative. But a movie like Amelie, same problem. That movie is heavily graded. They redid it. They did a restoration and upscale last year, and Jean-Pierre Jeunet came out and said, "Look, at the time, the producers wouldn't pay to upscale it, so there's never going to be a 4K version of Amelie, unfortunately." But it isn't a scam. If you've got the right equipment, things look great. But the problem is, will they spend the money?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to say there's a much cheaper way that's going to be more readily available going to the future.
Of course,
to upscale
and
stuff, and that's with
called
AI.
AI, but it's going to take so long for it to learn, and that the human eye.
Yeah, the problem is you've still got to go back to the original camera negative. Yep. I mean, AI might eventually get there, but it's not there yet.
I've got some pretty decent equipment. But you could there's certain there's an establishing shot in Austin Powers where they show the club and the big boy, and it just looks like shit. It looks like I was watching it on a CRTV with a fucking 480p, and then it gets into a beautiful scene. It's like, what, you know, and
well, a lot of the time
QC, I would have flagged the shit out of that back in the day and just go, no.
Yeah, well, a lot of like the Marvel movies, they were finished in 2K, you know, and that's just how they were finished. And a lot of visual effects were finished up until very recently. They might shoot the film, you know, on film or whatever, but the effects are still finished in 2K, so the movie gets finished in 2K, and you're still seeing an upscale. But if you go back and you watch like the 4K of Apocalypse Now, when they have negative that they're working from, it's incredible. 4K can be incredible. Jaws is incredible. Blade Runner, Alien, those movies that Die Hard. Die Hard looked terrible on home video for the longest time until that new 4K transfer that was done a couple of years back.
Really good.
Looks amazing.
4K Mission Impossible is just film grain, the movie.
Oh.
It's awful. It's like off-putting amount of film grain.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really depends on how they, because it was shot a certain way, and
same with Fistful of Dollars. Lots of grain on that one, but I watch it anyway because it's
great.
That could also be added grain that they're adding back in over upscaling to try and make it look
hiding
more...
something.
Yeah,
they do that too.
Yep. Hasahapa.
I think you got it.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. For Fitty. Yes. It's a spaceship porn. Gary looking for that Enterprise D. I prefer the Enterprise refit. Okay. Yes. Constitutional class.
Greatest starship.
The double D?
Galaxy class. Yeah. A lot of people like the Enterprise D. I think it's a little clunky. I think it's like fat spaceship. I like my spaceships a little sleek, a little more sexy. Not Another Dime is gifted 20 Nerdrotic memberships for $100. Hail. Miss Rachel has donated 100 on the Streamlabs side. Says, hail FNT. I was on CobraCast on Monday watching the inauguration with you guys. I was so filled with hope and happiness. I tried to give money, but PayPal is being stupid. PayPal's always stupid. Ask Eric July. I hope this makes up for it. Oh, it's all good. God bless America and FNT. God bless you. Hey, thank you. Thank you.
That's the Miss Rachel that makes children's YouTube videos. We appreciate your support.
Yeah, is it the Miss Rachel?
Miss Rachel.
There's only one.
There's only one ever.
Thank you.
Yarmoth for $100. Says, hail. Question for you all. Is there ever a time/moment/piece of media that does DEI well? Baldur's Gate 3 comes to mind. There are characters like that in the game, but they aren't cringe or in your face and are more examples of the possibilities to do so. Well, if we want to get into the nuanced discussion, DEI is dictated. And I don't think you can ever dictate art. But when you do stuff naturally, like the first seasons of The Expanse, it's great. No problem.
Yeah.
It's all about why is it there? How is it there?
Yeah.
How is it presented? All those things. Just because there's a black person in something doesn't make it
DEI. Just because there's a gay person
in something doesn't make it DEI. I feel like there's some arguments that have gone a little too far, like when it comes to that stuff. I'll take. So if you want me to say what's a show that had a lot of representation, whatever, that I thought was really good this year, it would be the Day of the Jackal on Peacock.
Yeah.
I thought it was excellent. Lashana Lynch was in it, and I don't love Lashana Lynch in a lot of things. She basically played a cop that was trying to track down Eddie Redmayne, who was an assassin. He essentially pretended to be gay at one point to get close to a person who he needed to get close to get access to the place in which he wanted to kill somebody, right? So there was representation in that. But I thought the story was great. I thought some of the set pieces they did were great. And I was riveted the whole time, even though it was a little bit of a slow burn in general. I thought the show was awesome. It had plenty of representation in it.
Well, how about all the movies, the socially aware movies we grew up with? Everything from In the Heat of the Night and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in the 60s to Glory or A Soldier's Story or even Milos Forman's Ragtime. I grew up watching movies that call them socially aware. Now, they weren't DEI movies, but they were telling great stories about, especially in America, the Black experience here. I mean, would Do the Right Thing be called a woke movie now? because it was dealing. There's that great scene when everybody's giving racial epithets to the other groups. You know, I mean, now with that's a great film that was dealing with the racial tension in Brooklyn, and nobody would have ever called that movie quote unquote woke. It was just a great film that was honestly dealing with real subject matter. And what happened to that? Why, it's so weird that we had DEI initiatives and we've been watching socially, I call them more socially relevant, but socially relevant films my whole life. I've been watching those things.
Yeah. It's because it's dictated. It's not authentic. Even though you're creating this story, we had authentic stories. They were told from an authentic place. Dictating art before you even put pen to paper or start hitting your keyboard is not authentic. It's the furthest thing from it. That's the problem.
I remember growing up, like I never thought of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as a black show. I never thought
Family
of Captain
Matters.
Sisko. Yeah.
The
So
Cosby
Captain Sisko
Show
was never the black captain. They were
227.
characters, and they were characters, and they never were promoted as this is the black show or the black character. Now that's their primary thing. You need to watch this because of the diversity, and they're the one who wants to make things in that racial, lens and depiction. But it was never an issue.
Nope. Mikey Gussler for 50. Hail, Mikey. Mikey, I watched Man of Steel last night. Jeremy hates it. I don't like parts of it. It's not as good as the Donner Superman, but I still watched it. Garrett on X-Ray Girl, or Garrett or X-Ray Girl. Sorry.
I was
like, wait, what? What is this?
Garrett or X-Ray Girl, please pull up the latest Hollywood Reporter article about the Ray movie finding a new writer. Seems he wrote Ocean's 12 and the Bourne Ultimatum. Seems Disney Lucasfilm really wants this movie to be made. Hope it loses money. Well, they had Stephen D. Knight writing. They had Stephen DeKnight from and
Peaky Blinders.
Peaky Blinders, and he bailed. That's
Peaky
a good writer.
Fucking Blinders.
Peaky Blinders is awesome, by the way.
It's a great
Fucking
fucking
awesome.
show.
Great.
And this is kind of, again, every time it loses right or whatever, people are like, oh, it's canceled, it's canceled, it's canceled. And what I'm continue to try to tell people is, I get it. A lot of things have been fucking canceled. This one, bringing Daisy Ridley up there at Star Wars Celebration, announcing that she's back. Sharmino Obaid-Chinoy, massive fucking woke feminist activist. But do you think she's going to go quietly into the good night if they cancel her project? You don't think she's going to scream about how ridiculous it is that they couldn't get this done as a Muslim woman, as a Pakistani woman who is supposed to bring all this diversity, that I didn't get my opportunity because this, and this? Bro.
Dude, after parading her out,
in
their power to get that out. They are.
Yeah.
That used to be the case, though, but if they drag it on long enough, the culture may change enough that nobody cares. And she kicks up a stink, and it's just,
We'll see.
And they're stuck in production hell for years and years.
Staccato. DDS has gifted 50 Nerdrotic memberships for $250. Thank you, Staccato. Gang, dang. Oh, hey, what's up? Geeking with James Hancock. Go check out his channel. I love him. Good dude. Been to the meetups. For $20 says, question for Mr. Burnett. With the release of Section 31, has Star Trek claimed the crown of most mismanaged franchise? And if not, which franchise currently has that honor?
Oh, I think it has. I mean, look, you could say Star Wars, I guess, but there's a lot less of Star Wars. There's a lot more of Star Trek. And I think it has been incredibly it's not so much, it's made by people that have, it's just a business decision for people. You know, you think about even the 4th season of Enterprise, Manny Koto, who took over the 4th season of Enterprise and made it more along the lines of original Star Trek. He put such love into those storylines. You had these great 3-part stories, 2-part stories that went back and delved into Star Trek history. The guy really cared because he loved Star Trek. Ron Moore, who went on to do Battlestar Galactica, he got a job in the 3rd season. He started his television writing career because he wrote a spec script because he wanted to write Star Trek. and you had people that loved the show. There's nobody who's working on Star Trek now that's doing it because they love Star Trek. Hey, it's a job, I want to get paid. And I think in order to make anything, when Vince Gilligan was creating Breaking Bad, that came out of his heart, and they weren't even going to keep Jesse around. But because the actor was so good, they're like, you know what? We're going to keep him around. And you look at those shows, you look at the shows that David Chase making The Sopranos. All of our great television is made by people that care, that love what they're doing. Modern Star Trek, both for Bad Robot and Secret Hideout. And remember, Brian Fuller was the one that developed Star Trek Discovery, and he was usurped. He was working with Nicholas Meyer, who wrote and directed Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek VI, and wrote the story for Star Trek IV. He was the original screenwriter on the second episode of Discovery. You won't find his name on that show anywhere. And these guys, were deposed. And it's really frustrating to see our entertainment, that people could love these things that are working on them, but they don't. They're just doing it for business reasons. And if you don't love what you're doing, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good.
No. He got usurped by Kurtzman, who was still buddy with Jar Jar Abrams. And they don't like each other now. So
they had a big falling out.
Huge falling out. Which JJ Jar Jar still had ties to, like, as long as he had a Star Trek 4. Remember how many times did Star Trek 4 get announced? I think it's at least 4.
Oh, I can't even imagine how much money they have against the development. How many directors and how many screenwriters have they hired and gotten rid of? And now they're making a Star Trek origin movie. For what purpose?
Who
wants to see that?
Who was going to be the first director for the Star Trek 4 that we never happened? S.J. Clarkson.
Yep.
S.J. Clarkson, director of Madam Web, who's up for a Razzie. I'm rooting for
all deserved.
Do a couple more here. We have a big square up to do Monday because I was supposed to do on Thursday. I had to finish a video, so sorry. Big square up to do Monday. Hail RMB and FNT crew. Was great to see gay representation on Drinker's show finally. By the way, Gary and RMB need to work on Drinker and correct him on the motion picture from Griff Nizzle for $10. The motion picture is fantastic.
I did do a whole show with Drinker about that.
You did.
I thought it was actually really a great show too. Yeah, I don't know if I totally brought him around, but maybe moved the needle a bit with him. Hope so. Watch that new 4K restoration.
I'm trying to. Okay, it says Gary and RMB are suckers for a schmexy aft. A schmexy. What are you saying, Brightest Day Audiobook Productions?
What?
That might have been after you said the whole thing about poop.
What poop?
What you said you were into ship porn.
Yeah, Starship.
Starship.
No, we're not. I'm not Neil Gaiman. Okay, I'm not Neil Gaiman. Not going to make you.
He does not eat the poo.
Best thing is I Googled it and it came back with the American Federation of Teachers, so I don't think that's it.
I think you can misinterpret it as shipping. Fuck that. But no, ship porn. That is an old nerd term. Ship porn. We've been saying that for
because
decades.
It sounded like tea. That was why.
Yeah, it's
are you still talking about this? Good Lord.
I genuinely thought you did say the poop porn.
I thought you said poop too.
The thing is, I knew exactly what you were saying.
Thank you.
I understood it. It was just funny enough.
Anthony Pritchett for $20 says, when I saw the thumbnail, I said, wow, Steve Bannon is on the show.
How dare you?
I get that a lot, though. I get that a lot. I understand. I know.
Hey, he's a former Hollywood producer, too. So,
yeah. I think he drinks more than me, and that's saying a lot.
Well, I think he's Catholic, so that makes sense.
Robert, stop. You're making sense. That's not allowed, says the one guy for $10. Yeah, get out of here with that making sense stuff. Wish RMB had control of Star Trek. I salute all. And we'll do one more. We'll do one. The Darkness for $19.99. All hail FNT. Shout out to everyone here. Two things. Shout out to RMB. Schmodown God. Yes, he is for that.
I don't know about that.
Can you ask X-Ray Girl if she is going to get the
No, I'm not.
dildo. I'm
No.
not going to ask her this, but she just the dildo game controller.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's a dildo that you can get where it apparently like I think the game is
Oh,
called
you
Flappy
were
Bird.
talking about it with Tugs on your podcast.
Yeah.
So you were talking about
apparently-
it.
Apparently, when you like wherever you're on the controller controls where the bird is in the screen. So, yeah, you can imagine
You,
what
you gotta,
a new
so
Twitch
you
meta
gotta
could be.
ride that thing to get that bird to flap, huh?
Wow.
Yeah. Anyways,
That's a no
let's
for
not
you.
talk about it anymore. I'm gonna
Not
get
a
off
thigh
the hill.
string.
That wraps it up for Friday. What was that? What?
Excuse me?
What was that?
No one said anything.
Okay.
Well, no, I was asking like the AFT. Was that referring to the aft of the ship, meaning the rear end of the ship?
Maybe the
yeah,
aft.
it could be.
See,
Yes,
he's
yes.
smarter than me.
Oh, it was a pun.
It was a pun, and I was too retarded to get it. I'm sorry.
We all
Yeah.
were.
There you go.
Brightest
Except
day.
I wasn't listening. So I wasn't
Brightest
really
day
caught.
audiobooks. We are not the brightest people here, except for Robert, who's free to go now. We're gonna run over to Rumble, unless you want to hang. It's totally fine. But
I can't. I got to go work on my little audio drama again. So-
that's awesome. Is there
Yeah,
anything
which-
you would like to promote with that, sir?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't, this is kind of really interesting. So I have been adapting Max Allan Collins. Max Allan Collins is a writer. He wrote Road to Perdition, the graphic novel that the movie was based on. And I've been doing an audio drama of his first novel, True Detective, that's set in 1932 and 1933 Chicago. And I had a lot of people say to me, don't you think this is it's full of a bunch of white guys? You know, are people going to want to watch a show that's from 19 or listen to a show that's set in 32 and 33? But it's based on real history. It's the clash between fiction and truth, fiction and actual historical events. And of all the things I've ever worked on, I'm most proud of it. I mean, you've got Michael Rosenbaum stars in it, but I've got people like David Strathairn, who was in the Bourne movies, Bill Sadler, who was Sloane on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Katie Sackhoff is in it, C. Thomas Howell is in it, and it's really terrific. You can go find it at truenoir.co, truenoir.co, and it's going to be 10 episodes total. And hopefully it'll be the first of many of these audio dramas. But to me, because I'm always talking mad shit about how much I hate modern Star Trek, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. You know, I had Max adapt his own novel into a 10-chapter, incredible script. And it's, there we go. Michael Rosenbaum, by the way, incredible to work with. One of the greatest guys I've ever worked with professionally. So smart, such a great actor. And he's, you hear him narrating it, 300 pages of dialogue. The guy knocked it out of the park.
Good podcast.
I'm so proud of this work. And the actors, I mean, Adam Arkin is in it. I got Barry Bostwick, who was in Rocky Horror Picture Show and used to be on Spin City. He comes back and plays FDR. And of course, Jeffrey Combs, Dr. Herbert West from Reanimator, and then also he was in Star Trek as Shran, and he was played many different roles. Brunt, who was a Ferengi, and of course the Vorta. It's been so great. Yeah, there you go. There's the cast list, and Louis Lombardi from The Sopranos, Bill Mumy from Lost in Space and The Twilight Zone, Patton Oswalt,
Babylon 5.
Babylon 5, Richard Portnow, Katie Sackhoff. I mean, it is a great cast of characters, and I've never had so much fun making something. But really, I give all the credit in the world to Max Allan Collins for writing a script that is like one of the best things I've ever worked on. So kudos to him.
Crowdfunded, well done, you out there who supported it.
Thank you.
Well done. That's great. That cast would have put you back a little bit. That was a TV show, but that's why I freaking love audiobooks. I love audio dramas.
And we made it sound cinematic, so it's mixed in. It's like a movie, but you just can't see it. So if you have a 5.1 system
of the mind,
yes,
theater of the mind.
Robert,
Robert,
thanks for having me on and talking about this, because this was a dark day for me watching Section 31.
Yeah,
it really was. I mean, with everything else, with people's, I know people in the city who've lost everything over the last 2 weeks. The fires were terrible, and Then to have to watch this, it was like being kicked in the balls 100 times. Only because it took something I've loved since I was 5 years old. And I've been watching something being bastardized since 2009. And this was just the final. It's like, why? Why do you guys have to do this? You could have something that inspired me. I mean, I made a movie that I wrote and directed that stars William Shatner that's about my love of Star Trek.
Yes.
That stars Eric McCormack, Will on Will and Grace. 2 Emmy Award winners about my love of Star Trek. And then they give me the swill that is Section 31.
We got to see that in a theater in Vegas. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Free enterprise.
But yeah. I showed it in we went to the USA Film Festival in Texas. In Dallas, we showed it when it first came out. Texas audiences are great.
Yes, we are.
I got to come back down there and show you something. But thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Robert, love you, man. Thanks for coming on. I'll see you soon. I'll be in LA next couple of months, so I'll ping you.
Yeah, ping me. We'll all go out.
Yeah. We'll hang out.
All right, everybody. Thank you all for having me. Thanks for being nice.
See you, Robert.
Always good to see you.
Take care, Robert. Robert Burnett, everybody. RMB. Go subscribe to the Burnett Network. He does spectacular live streams at night, late at night. He does really good live streams that I watch. So thank you for, again, Big Square Up coming on Monday. Rumble and Nerdrotic Live. We're on Rumble and YouTube right now. We're heading over to Rumble for the exclusive. Thank you to the Modrotics. Thanks to everyone who left a super chat donation. You help keep the lights on. Thanks to all the lurkers. Thanks to everybody for watching and participating in the chat. Chat, you are the show. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Rumble.
Radical light. Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
Dame, dame, dame.